My name is Tyler Fornes, and I am one of the co-hosts of the Good, the Bad, and the Hungy AEW podcast here on the Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network. We take a broad scope approach to the world of All Elite Wrestling and the entire universe of Tony Khan. We talk about the big matches, the big stars, the promos, the storylines, and we also look at it from a big picture perspective. How are things going to change over the course of the next 10 years with AEW still in the picture? How are companies like WWE going to adapt and adjust to AEW? Are they going to be a similar way like they did with WCW in the late 1990s? Will there be a counterpunch? We talk about all of that and more on The Good, the Bad, and the Hungy every week on the Voice of Wrestling Network.
Do you like wrestling trivia? Then check out the 5-Star Match Game, the Pro Wrestling Quiz Show. I'm Joe Gagney, and every episode, I grill 3 contestants with 5 rounds of power-packed wrestling trivia. We have over 30 evergreen episodes in the archives covering WWE, AEW, Japan, Mexico, and much, 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 much more. Play along at home and check it out today.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So far. Fast to finger down. Stars tonight together. Here everybody's singing. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for July 7th, 2025. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling podcast feed or on our own dedicated Open the Voice Gate feed, wherever you get your podcast. You can follow us on social media at Open Voice Gate. If you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. You just click the red button that says sponsor this podcast, and you can set up a one-time or reoccurring donation. No obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank all of our previous donors. Hey everyone, it is Mike, and as it usually is come this time, we have an episode that we recorded yesterday, July 6th, with Jae Church, of course, the English voice of Dragongate, and as well like the longtime Dragon System historian. I don't know. It's like him and Bahu feel like to be like the two out of like that realm that are still kind of going. I guess sometimes I see Irving of like the All Japan fans. I forget what it was called. I see him on my timeline occasionally. But as always, it's a fun Jay episode. We talk a little bit about the July 3rd Korakuen before getting into a big Kobe World preview. And that's pretty much the lion's share of the episode. A bit of a programming note before we get into the talk with Jay. So this is coming out on a Monday, and that should be it for our little bit of abbreviated early July, late June break. We'll be back normal time next week, of course, clearly after Kobe World, to give our Kobe World 2025 review show. And by that time, maybe we'll have more of an indication on when the next of those days will come up. But expect us back to a normal schedule pretty much starting from the next episode. But I've prattled on far too long. Let me pitch it back to me and our conversation with Jay. Hope everyone has a nice week and enjoy Kobe World coming up on Sunday. Take care, everyone. It is Kobe World Pro Wrestling Festival season, and this is our last show before Kobe World. We have the official English voice of Dragongate, Jae Church, joining us for what's kind of become the traditional preview. Jay, how are you doing right now? Thanks for coming aboard again.
No, happy to always be here. Good to see you guys again. I'm very hot. Very hot in Japan right now, but I assume that's kind of same for you guys.
We've actually, because of a weather event, it was for the 4th in Texas, was only like 80 when I was at my father-in-law's ranch, but we've had an insane amount of rain. Only 80.
Yeah,
Only 80.
There was like a really bad flooding event in Texas somewhere.
Yeah, unfortunately, down in actually closer to where Joe Lanza of the flagship lives than Dallas-Fort Worth. It's the Texas Hill Country. The rain just came through over the last few days, and the Guadalupe River went up 23 feet. So
51 dead. Yeah. The article I'm reading. God, that's awful.
Yeah, it's real sad.
Well, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, it's earlier than usual this year. Doesn't it feel like it's earlier than usual? World season?
I thought so. I know Case and I were talking about it like over the few weeks. Like it feels like traditionally Kobe World, just in my head, like the window of it's usually the 15th through the 23rd. Like it's usually like the 20th, 21st, or 22nd. But this year it's a full week early, it feels like.
But then I was thinking last night, I was like, oh, I kind of like 2023 when they had World and then a Korakuen in July. And that might be my preferred mode of scheduling. But it definitely snuck up on me last week. There was like, oh, that's right. World is next week.
And that's exactly it. The fact that it's so soon after the July Korakuen is what's throwing me.
So that Korakuen and what? Oh, go ahead, Jay. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, so that Korakuen was on Thursday. Just in case there was anything that breaks, we're recording this on the 6th. It did kind of feel like, at least for Case and I really haven't talked too much about the show since it happened. Everything was kind of already set up going into this show by and large, and I was very excited about Shun Skywalker and Hamare, and especially seeing how Hamare was going to progress against YAMATO in the main event. But there was a little bit of a feeling of, well, we had an extra Korakuen before Kobe World, but we've already finished our project.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
It reminded me. Go ahead, Jay.
I thought they did really well in kind of having every match be a skirmish for something. So
it's definitely a show that I think has been incredibly well built. Outside of the 2 or 3 week long Shun distraction where we weren't really sure what was going to happen there, which isn't anybody's fault, but that definitely turned some anticipation that I had, some excitement that I had, into nervous energy. But Shun's back, and that seems to be going okay. But
what do you mean it's nobody's fault? the whole thing. I mean, the injury wasn't real.
See, that's incredible to me, because that got me. Especially out of that Kobe show.
It got all of us.
Yeah,
we all got work.
And it's like, I get, and then he shows up at the New Japan show with the stipulation that he's talked about, and I want to get into that just to for the sake of clarification of if Shun loses, he's going to leave Dragongate stipulation. But there was just this 2 week period of the injury that wasn't the injury, and then him showing up on the New Japan show with, I think, some people still not entirely sure what the reality of that stipulation is, where it's like, oh my God, are we about to enter a Shun Skywalker-less universe? But if you take away the nerves of the Dreamgate build, I do think that match is the biggest match you can book, and I'm quite excited for that, and I think the result there is interesting. And then it's a Twin Gate match that is fresh. It's a Triangle Gate match that I think has a very high ceiling if they're able to deliver to the degree that I hope they are. And then a Brave Gate match, which is the best built Brave Gate match since Daya and Hyo last year, and one that feels really, really exciting for me. So, I have an issue with the undercard. I'm not exactly thrilled about the 5-way Gaora match. I'm a little bummed that Mochizuki and KZ specifically are spinning their Kobe World doing that. But and then there's Strong Machine Jay Kikuta, which I think has been excellently built. So there's a lot to like on Kobe World. And I think this Korakuen, I was telling Mike before we started recording, reminded me of an AEW pay-per-view build where, let's say there's 7 weeks in between pay-per-views, they've got an amazing 6-week build. They really nail it, and then they happen to have another week of TV, and this Korakuen felt like that other week of TV.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's fair. Definitely fair. I thought it did a pretty good job of giving previews for everything. Like you mentioned, all the title matches, like all the championship matches on this card are the best possible challengers you could have for a Kobe World card, at least, given in the current climate. So I agree with you with all that about the championship matches for sure.
It's exciting to see, I think like the Love and Peace stuff has been fascinating, and we haven't talked about that. The last time we talked was in May when we were like, maybe there's not a place for natural vibes anymore. And then Flamita came in and was like, oh no, there's a place for natural vibes. And it was, right before the Kikuta turn. And then this Love and Peace thing that I think is fascinating. Not to jump all around and go out of order here, but I'm continuously fascinated by the fact that Gold Class seemed to have finally found the 5 members that worked for them and seemed to have had some momentum, and then they changed the unit branding. And I think I'm okay with that. I like the way they look. I don't love the name, but I do love the colors, even if I wish Kame and Rito would get some new gear. But it's all in all, when I take stock of where this promotion is, and I think about, the last few podcasts we've done with you at the beginning of July, I'm very happy with this Kobe World build, all things considered.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been going back through a lot of my archives on things, just kind of put them in order and organize things better so I have easier access to like my memos and stuff when I'm making commentary notes. And I went through basically everything since I started commentary. So after Final Gate 2019.
Yes.
And 2021 and 2022 were just so dire in comparison.
Yeah, especially 22.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to on this card. Do you guys want to start with Korakuen? Though you mentioned that you wanted to talk about the Korakuen show first, or
yeah, Mike, run down the Korakuen card real quick if you don't mind.
Yeah, so this was the Aggressive Gate from Thursday, announced 1066 attendance. Ryoya and Monte team up, unaffiliated versus UT and Flamita, all strong Brave Gate build. Are we now calling the two Cross Sabers just Cross Saber in general, or is it Cross Saber combo?
It's just Cross Saber.
Just Cross Saber.
Just Cross Saber.
It's become one of my favorite closing sequences is Tanaka with that.
The lift up and drop and then roll through, pick them up and hit the thingo.
Yeah, it just now that it feels like one full kind of multiple impact move sequence, it's all right, this, it does kind of feel like for Tanaka, everything is kind of together. He's not doing the survive tilt-a-whirl schoolboy as much. It feels like he has that closing finish. And as y'all were saying, UT and Tanaka have really been a highlight of the build to Kobe World so far, and the chemistry of those two guys is really going to be a fun opportunity to display at Korakuen Hall on the 13th. So that was the opener. Dragonbane and Alpha Wolf, the Golpadores, came out. Fortunately, Alpha Wolf is doing much better. They're doing a match at the next Korakuen. Veteran and rookie 10-man tag. Fuji got the win over Takashi. Rita and Bandito. Rita got the win on Bandito with a really like I had to go back and rewind it and watch it a couple of times. The way that Rita went off the top ropes with his finish that he had on Bandito here. It felt like it was somewhat of Rita now has like a big move now that's able to put down someone of the size of Bandito that's going to really play into the Triangle Gate match coming up at World. And then we had SMJ and KZ go to a no contest with Kakuta and Kai. Probably my favorite feud going into World is Strong Machine J and Kakuta, and it's been great seeing them just lose complete control going up to it. Z-Brats versus Love and Peace. Ben-K on Minoura getting the win. Kazuma Kimura is making his debut on that August Korakuen. D-Courage versus Not Hug. It was Dragongate with the Doible on Yoshioka. And then the main event, which I kind of want to take some time with a little bit, Jay, just because how much it at least on VoiceGate between Case and I, we have really been enjoying how this Hamare in the first half of 2025 storyline goes from being like kind of a Kobe Samba Hall base like push for him through Ray Day Parejas. He gets a larger tournament in Bravegate and going up to the last Dead or Alive. We talked about that with you in May. And now, less than a year into his career, this guy is headlining Korakuen Hall shows. It's a real remarkable 12-month period for Hamare since he's just debuted. Like I just find him absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, man, they're behind him, and he's not he's not perfect by any means, but for 9 months into his career, this kid is as good as you can be for 9 months into your career. They're they're covering up quite well, by having him be a heel and having him kind of be like this little like sleazy stalling and running and hiding behind the other guys and getting out of the way. It does quite a bit to cover up some of his weaknesses while he works on them. But yeah, this match with YAMATO was really good.
I just like with him, like I think the other really smart thing is starting him off heel, like letting him kind of pick and choose and grow, and by hiding kind of the things that he needs to kind of work on being a heel. You're already like, I've really noticed it in Sanbo Hall, but it's kind of pulling over to Tokyo as well. Like he's getting a good amount of crowd calls, like to the point that whenever this period is done and they're ready to turn the page and to turn him face, it feels like that he would be off to the races if he's able to kind of maintain this level of support that he already has 9 months in.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be it's already hard to keep him heel because of how popular he is. I think he was number one in the portrait rankings. Let me see if I could find the most recent set. Okay, he dropped to third because the UT fans went nuts and rallied him from out of the top 10 to number one, and somehow Motsuki Jr. also jumped ahead of him. Motsuki Jr. wasn't in the top 10 in the previous one either.
Jay, what do you think it is about Hamare that has allowed him not only to receive the push from the beginning of his career, but to stay relevant? Something that we talk about a lot on this show is there's no better promotion at debuting wrestlers than Dragongate. The first chapter of a lot of these guys' careers is absolutely incredible. It's once the luster wears off of, hey, we've got a new Dragongate wrestler, that's when sometimes they tend to struggle. You know, I think we're at that point with Sahara right now. I know he was hurt, but it's like, all right, I'm going to be anxiously anticipating to see what Sahara can do now post Rey de Parejas and teaming with Mochizuki and things like that. But with Homare, it seems like everything they throw at him, he's able to succeed. You know, he was doing the trios matches where he was really hidden, and he did well on those. And then Rey de Parejas happens, and he has a middling tournament until that final night, and then it's this star-making performance. And now we're seeing him headline Korakuen Hall in singles matches. And I've seen a lot of people debut in my lifetime, a lot of people debut in Dragongate. I don't feel like I've seen this entirely. It reminds me a little bit of SB Kento, which, you know, I say that complimentary because it was Kento when he was in Dragongate, but Homare feels even different in like almost like a safer bet than that.
Oh, by far, yeah, he's much better than SBK was at that time. I mean, well, Homare really hasn't talked yet. So I don't know about that, but yeah, Homare doesn't feel like the push isn't as overbearing as SBK's was.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that helped a lot. I think the closest comparison might be Hulk, BB Hulk, but you know that's 20 years ago.
No, but I can see that. Is there? How do I want to phrase this question? Is this a deal where Homare is legitimately under Shun's wing, and that on a show in show out basis, he's his go-to mentor is Shun Skywalker? Do you happen to know that?
I would probably not.
Okay.
I don't think anybody goes to Shun for that. But you know, he's got a lot of support inside there's Kai, there's Yoshiki, there's Lee. You know, he can learn from example by how Ishin has developed his character over the last year. So, we joke about, well, ZBRAS is not a nurturing environment for a child to be in. It's like, can't really you shouldn't raise a child in a crack house. But, there's a lot of experience, a lot of people that can help him out in ZBRAS.
Okay, interesting.
It doesn't help. I mean, it doesn't hurt that he is also that good. Like, it's not like, well, he's good looking or like SB and that, he's got a lot of sponsors and it brings a lot of money in, so we have to push him sort of thing. Like he's gonna just wait until he turns. Just wait. I don't know if it's gonna be this year. Like, it could be a long way off, but when he turns, it's probably gonna be a really big deal, and it's gonna surprise a lot of people. Exactly what he can do, because you haven't seen what he can do yet.
And we've seen now, especially going through the Sambo Hall work that he's done, it feels like that we get glimpses of, okay, this is what he could be as a face, or especially seeing the work that he had against Kamei in the Bravegate tournament. You're just going well, you put him in the ring with perhaps one of the best in-ring wrestlers in the company, and he's already able to put out this kind of output as a pure rookie. It really does kind of when we do, at least in Voices of Wrestling, doing things like the 30 under 30 project, when you look at how he is, at least within the first 9 months, acquitted himself, and you contrast that to other wrestlers even in Japan or throughout the rest of the wrestling world, and you're just like, is there someone who might have as many projectable tools as a wrestler as this guy has, and especially at his age and at his time in his career? And it's just one of whenever people start talking or like ask me, Mike, when you get into Dragongate, it seems so overbearing. It seems like that there's a lot of lore, and I don't want to mess with lore too much. I just talk to them about like how rewarding it is to see a young wrestler debut and then follow them throughout their years and progress. And Hamare might be the one that, as he progresses and as he like has finally that face turn maybe in 2026 or 27, and then seeing him like be able to have more of those kind of performances like he had against Kamei as a singles wrestler. It just it's very hard to not just want to just invest everything into Hamare and just be and just try to attach yourself to the rocket ship and see where it goes.
Yeah, you make a good point about getting in on a group of rookies and that being the jump on point and the investment point, because that's been one of the big key things for Stardom this year. Kamitani's the MVP for the year, period, across men and women's wrestling in Japan. But like that group of rookies that they've debuted this year has, or all of the fans that left when Tam or Iwatani left, a new fan was coming in to follow Kurara or Hikyo or, whatever. And that's Dragongate's strong point against all of the other men's promotions in Japan right now. So hopefully Kimura does well when he debuts, and Sahara can get some momentum going on that as well. And hopefully they start using Daiki as well. Hopefully they start actually, getting matches on every show. But we'll see what happens.
That Hamare Yamato match took us into Shun Skywalker coming out, hadn't been seen in a few weeks in a Dragon Gate ring. And then this Yamato versus Shun 5-minute singles match where Shun gets the win, just before the 5-minute time limit. That's the second time he's beat Yamato clean in a singles match this year in Korakuen Hall. Jay, for the sake of just clarity, Shun Skywalker's been saying that he's going to leave Dragon Gate if he doesn't win at Kobe World, but that is not an official stipulation, correct?
Correct.
What's your read of all this then?
Well, I mean, could win and not go anywhere. He could lose, and it would not be out of character for Shun Skywalker to have lied.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that I don't want to besmirch his reputation and cast aspersions on him, but he could be a liar, or he could lose and show up at the end of the G1 and attack whoever wins. It could be a lot of different things.
What does your gut tell you right now?
My gut?
Yeah, in terms of the result here.
I don't think he's going anywhere. That's what you're asking me.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about, because I would say there's no one else on the roster that I'd be afraid of leaving, and there's no one else on the roster that I'd be worried about long term if they left. But I do have to look in the direction of New Japan, and I see a company that is starting to become pretty desperate. They don't have the money though.
Yeah, don't they have to? I was gonna say, like, the big rumor I heard is that they get no Bushi Road money, and basically what the backbone or lifeline that we saw the conglomerate promotions have in the past is pretty much gone. Like that they have to spend and earn their own money from here on, is what I heard.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about that. So I couldn't tell you. But let me rephrase it. Let me put it this way: if Shun was leaving, right? Do you think they would make an angle out of it like this?
The only time you could really kind of go back to that, you would think about 2018 when Shingo, like, it was not word that Shingo was already on the way out, but like with like the hindsight, and especially with what we have been able to discern over the years about old Dragon Gate and new Dragon Gate, I feel like that's kind of like the only like comparison would be getting one last Kobe World out of Shingo, where he kind of shot his own angles, claiming that he wanted to become president after winning the company, and then very quickly after saying that he was on the way out. But that there was no stipulation whatsoever. That was more, okay, Shingo, you have that one last Shingo Dreamgate match at Kobe World, and then you kind of start the typical graduation tour that we've come to see over the last 20 years.
I think pro wrestling logic would tell us that if Shun were going to leave, they would try to milk it for everything that they can. Now, pro wrestling logic doesn't always apply to Dragon Gate logic, and that's always an interesting thing to confront. I don't think he's going anywhere, but if anybody was going to go, if anybody was going to be courted with a major offer, it would be Shun, and they do have an exit ramp with him losing a Dreamgate match at World, which is the only thing that I'm nervous about. Is it feels like there's a few different things aligning here to where I can't entirely shoo it away and go, no, you're out of your mind. Of course he's going to stay. If he was going to be written off, it would be in a scenario like this. At least that's what normal pro wrestling logic would tell us.
But it's backwards, though, right? Like these sorts of stipulations are usually the champion is the one that says, "I'll give you the title shot, but you've got to put something up." So
yeah,
you know,
that's
like
true.
The Kamitani Tam thing earlier this year, which is another thing. The fact that if loser leaves the company has been a buzzword or a popular thing in 2025.
Very much so.
Oh.
Very much so. I think the build of this has been excellent. We were kicking around, especially after the Kakuta turn. Oh, what are they going to do with Yamato? It could be this. It could be this. It could be Kakuta once again. But by the time the dust had settled and we got to Yamato versus Shun, it was one of those where you look back at January, you look back at the result of that first Korakuen show, and you go, okay, well, this is the right match. This is the biggest match they have, and it's a match where I could believe any result. If Shun wins the title, great. Then Shun Skywalker's Dreamgate champion, my favorite wrestler, holds the top prize. I can't wait. If Yamato wins, even just removing Shun from the equation, I think this is the career-defining run of Yamato's career. I think he's the best champion in wrestling. I would love to see him defend the title more. I want to see him have another Kakuta match, and I want to see him have a Flamita match and maybe a junior match. All these different things that he can still do. And then, assuming Skywalker sticks around, let's go with the idea that he's lying. Okay, great. Now we've got another possibly super fascinating Shun Skywalker angle to come out of this show. So I'm invested no matter what.
It also kind of this kind of run that Yamato has had, and Case and I took about an hour of a recent show, Jay, and we decided to see, like, okay, just to put current day Yamato's 6th Dreamgate run in context, let's take a look at the other 39 Dreamgate champions, and not outright go, this one's better than this one, but let's say, okay, we all consider these S tier, A tier, B tier. Case had something called 2008 Shingo Takagi as a tier. But as we were going through this exercise, we very quickly kind of came to a point where there weren't very many Dreamgate runs that we would argue were much better than what we've seen out of Yamato. And at least for me, the whole Shun added stipulation, there's a part of me that wishes that that Shun just shut his mouth and not said, oh, if I don't win, I'm going to leave this company too. But because, like, you have so much, like, still possible fences lining up for Yamato if he gets past Shun Skywalker. There's always the idea of, or at least I feel like there's always the place of, after you do the Yuki Yoshioka gets his groove back, like that's on offer. Like there's just so many more places that you can go to on a title run that's already approaching that 365-day portion. And the other aspect of this program that I find really kind of interesting is at least the framework of, usually this company likes everyone to have to go home happy after after Kobe World, and for like the longest time there weren't very many heels that would win at Kobe World, at least in the main event. And it kind of like, you have this position where we did not get a super long Shun Skywalker heel Dreamgate run when he picked up the belt from Yoshioka and held it until Dead or Alive to drop it against Kakuta. But there's a part of me where Jay, I'm trying to go like, well, Shun can't be turning face if he wins this immediately. But even though there is the part of me in my lizard brain that's going, but that's what happened in 2008. They very quickly turned Shingo out of it. And I don't feel like a Kobe World main event in recent years has had this amount of like just open possibility coming out of it, because I'd argue that there's still a lot of leash left in Shun Skywalker as a heel before wanting to turn him babyface after winning a Dreamgate belt here at World this year.
Yeah, the 2008 ending is definitely something that could be on the table. What else? Yeah, he wins title, stays heel, loses, leaves the company, loses, was a liar, wins the company, or wins the championship, and, Z-Brats turn on him anywhere between the bell ringing at the end of the match, or before, or at Otaku or after Otaku, or whatever. Those are all things that are on the table. You do have to keep in mind what what is Kiku's focus right now.
Well, his focus right now is killing Strong Machine J, but I think once he gets past that, I feel like it's not the result that I want the most, but I do feel like the most likely result is Shun wins and then gets turned on by Z-Brats, and then you're setting up a Kakuta versus Shun program.
Yeah, I mean, with what I was getting at with Kikuta is the fact that his heel turn ultimately was not about him turning on D Courage because of they couldn't get along, or because he didn't like Yoshioka. He joined Z-Brats because he's trying to get revenge on all of the other Reiwa New Generation guys, because he feels they let him down. He handpicked them, and they've all failed for different things. So he's embarrassed Yoshioka. He's gonna try to embarrass Strong Machine J now, and then that leaves Ben-K, Shun, and Minoura still, and he can be cool with Minoura for a while. Can he be cool with Shun for a while? Does he get distracted by Ben-K first and then go for Shun? That's something else that you have to watch with Z-Brats and Kikuta and Shun and all that. Like, you have to keep, when thinking about the next step Kikuta is gonna make, then that's something that you're gonna have to keep in mind until he runs through all of those guys.
And then you have the idea of, all right, somehow they all keep it together within Z-Brats. You don't have Kakuta kind of turn towards them. And this is, at least since the days of RED, and if you want to kind of go further back, you're talking about like initial Mad Blanky, if not Blood Warriors. We have an enormous heel army, at least for this time in Dragongate, and especially if Johnny shows back up randomly with the sirens blaring. Like there's there's also, I feel like the chance that, maybe even Shun wins, Shun's doesn't win, but you have the ideas that you have now Z-Brats with Shun Skywalker being very much like Shun trying to accomplish his missions and aims with that. And now that eventually you have a figure like Akuda who has completely different motivations, and how long can that all hold in a heal unit that is now usually walking around at 8? And it makes you wonder, like, oh, is this a time where we could be possibly be seeing a heel split coming out of this too? It does really feel like, whereas in past years we would go like, okay, it's 2016, we assume Yamato's going to win this title, and that's kind of off to the races here with it. And that was very much like the tipped hand, that's where things were going. We don't have that at Kobe World, and it feels like that not having a tipped hand and having all these opportunities is when we've had this main event that really it was always going to kind of be like this. It does feel very new, the idea that there's so many different possible outcomes, and when we might be sitting here talking before Oda and Dangerous Gate, it could be a plan Z that we are not even aware of. That just feels like that this is a main event that there has that many possible outcomes out of it, and it's really it's real exciting. And I have to say, comparing it to some of the booking that we have seen from this promotion under this leadership group as it relates to the Dreamgate, this is pretty easily like the best booked Dreamgate program they've had go into Kobe World in the entire Ryo Saito administration. I'd wager.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Yamato 2016 though, because that was last time we had a cathartic face turn from a top guy. It's been almost 10 years now. Think about, you mentioned Blood Warriors and RED too. I saw someone mention, a couple of people mentioned actually, that the end of Dead or Alive felt like the RED at Final Gate 2020 moment, and
sure.
you could also say Blood Warriors at Final Gate 2011 moment. But neither of those groups got their comeuppance. So hopefully it wasn't.
Yeah, that's right. RED just kind of then gets invaded by Shun, and they go off on their own completely new direction. And
that was a full year later, though.
That's right. Yeah. No, they just kind of existed throughout 2022 until that point, or 2021. 2021.
Yeah. And then Eita was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And Blood Warriors too. I think a lot of people forget. It was a long time ago. A lot of people forget about this, though. That they did the incomprehensible Shima face turn like on the second or third show of the following year, just completely resetting everything. Junction 3 get disbanded. Blood Warriors win. They turn in, and then they turn to Mad Blanky and get clowned on. And it took a while, it took until really Yamato joined them in the next version of Mad Blanky for that to finally get back on its feet. So it's not like they have a great track. There isn't a historic track record for like heel groups being at their most dominant and then getting their comeuppance. So if they can make it happen here, hopefully, this would be the first time in a long time that they've pulled it off, that they've actually pulled this sort of thing off. Of course, you also have to consider if the Z-Brats do turn on Shun, then who's going to want to team with the guy.
Yeah, that's the Hamare piece of that, where you wonder if Hamare jumps at that point too, if they keep him heel a little bit longer, which I think is a fascinating dynamic. And then, we were talking about this in the preview for Dead or Alive, where Shuna spent 3 years alienating the entire roster. I think it's going to take him a long time to find allies if he does turn, people that are already faces. Because if you're in Natural Vibes, why would you want to do that? And if you're in Love and Peace, why would you want to do that? And if you're in Paradox, I think that's the least antagonistic unit that Shun's been antagonistic towards, but also Shun just wrestled Yamato. So I find that to be really fascinating. I'm curious to see what comes of that, but I also, and I think Jay, this is your fault because you laid out such a good plan, but I'm still married to this idea of Yamato wins here, and then you turn Shun, and then it's this babyface run for the title at Fukuoka that Shun has, which is what I really would like to see, which is Yamato break the Dreamgate record, Shun turn face, and then Shun win the belt in 2026. That to me is the most entertaining option, but it feels like the closer we get to World, the less likely that is to happen.
Yeah, that was kind of my assumption of where before Shun put the stip on it. Was my assumption was they're going to do, it'll be Yamato and Shun, and Shun will go in super confident, trash talk, all of this, blah 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 blah, and then lose, and then it would be, and get turned on, and the story would be, the Shun redemption story would be he goes from I'm above Dragongate and everything in it. I'm above the Dreamgate Championship. I'm above all of this to, for lack of a better term, come back down to earth and realize that he's not bigger than the company, but he loves the company and he wants the Dreamgate, not for his own person. Have that kind of change of heart and come around on that. And, change the black costume to a white costume. And then, by then, Yamato's still the champion, or by then, maybe Kikuta's the champion. And he's the one that ends up vanquishing the monster Kikuta. But, such is life. Not going to be that way. Here's another thing to consider. Another thing to consider, though. So, let's say if Shun wins. Because right now, everyone's worked into a shoot over this, right? Everyone's like, well, he's got to be going to New Japan. He's got to be doing this. And Shun fans are in hysterics and everything, blah blah blah. And at the end of the day, if he wins, even if he does it and there's not a turn immediately or even a turn in the short term, the fact that he won and stayed does plant, even if it's very small, it does plant a seed in people's minds, the Dragongate fans that are worried that he's going to leave. It does plant the seed that, Shun's not going anywhere. He really is staying. And that is a seed that can eventually grow that can go a long way toward helping fans accept him as a good guy. So in that aspect is also masterful, assuming it plays out that way.
Do you feel like with the fan base at large, we were talking a few years ago when you had all of these departures, some new guys, some older guys, but it was just there was a period in the early 2020s where there was a ton of roster turnover, and you had mentioned that perhaps fans had become a little anxious and a little worried to latch on to some of these rookies because you don't know if they're going to be around or not. Within the fan base, is there like an overwhelming sense of trauma of like, hey, our favorite could go at any time? You never know what's going to happen in Dragon Gate anymore.
Well, I mean, that feeling, that is not just Dragon Gate anymore.
Yeah, that's everywhere.
It's every. But yeah, I mean, that trauma definitely does. I mean, I don't think it's any more in Dragon Gate than honestly, I think it's worse in New Japan than anywhere right now, just because of the, Dragon Gate has had a lot of, let's just say post-COVID, there were a lot of suspicious departures and a lot of disappointing departures, but like none of them took the bag and ran, like Okada or Ospreay, So in that sense, New Japan fans have had it much worse. over the last few years. But yeah, but you do also have to think. Do consider this. SB and Takubo were 2 years ago now, right?
Departure was 2 years ago. I mean, they haven't wrestled in Japan in over 3 years now, or Kento's coming up on 3 years, but, Taku left after the June 2022 Sambo Hall show.
Yeah, and SB left after World 2022,
22,
right?
after the Hyo match at World.
Yeah, so, and, Takumo was only around for 6 months. So, I think we're far enough removed from those departures that there's quite a newer, particularly like the newer fans don't even remember any of that. So as we create more distance from that, and there's newer fans coming in, that anxiety starts to go away. Old fans are always going to be anxious. I mean, I've been I've been anxious since 2004. I've been anxious for 21 years at this point. So that it doesn't go away, but it is what it is.
I would have to say that, not to do like compare and contrast pain with it, that within like the Dragon system and the low-lying anxiety that I just think like I came in later than you, Jay, and I still have like the hairs on the back of my neck stand up when certain things that just kind of happen or don't necessarily pass the smell test. But when you like look at it, I feel like the Dragon system, not that they have like conditioned fans to be ready for graduations and such, but an aspect of the life of like the Dragon system is the idea that, and I think it's become more true the older the promotion gets, is that it's always a young person's promotion. It started as the place that would take anyone, but now it's really seen as kind of more so like this great producer of young wrestlers, that there seems to always kind of be that aspect in the back of your brain going like, okay, even if we take Shun for his word, and that's a very dangerous thing considering how he was ranting about colors on YouTube. But if you take him by his word at the very least, and you look at it as, okay, on the 13th, that's it. Arguably, we're talking about someone who maybe has had within a 10-year period, the most successful 10-year period of anyone throughout the 26 years of the promotion, I would say. That's been one of the things that's been kind of ringing in my head lately.
Sort of single, yeah. I mean, what was your first traumatic Dragongate experience?
Oh, geez. Well, I would probably say, and this is very low-lying, the breakup of Tozawa Juku was very traumatic for me.
I mean your first.
Oh shit!
Vaguely worded press release posted at 1 a.m. on the blog.
Oh, just because of when I entered like this, because of Ring of Honor and all of that, it would have to be the core scandal.
Of course, yeah. So I guess it would have been
2009.
It would have been Kenshin then. He was
Kenshin going to do kickboxing.
Kenshin
allegedly
leaving to do quote unquote kickboxing. Ryoma or Yohei bailing on his suspension, and referee Oya leaving silently. All in that kind of 6-week span.
It would have been that or Kenta Tomonaka's arrest.
Kenta. Yeah, that's a good one.
It would have been Kenta, because Kenta happened before the course.
No, it didn't. He was
that was after. Yeah.
Because it was right around Dead or Alive. Because I was just talking to somebody. Somebody was DMing me saying they just watched Mochi and Yamato from Dead or Alive 2011 for the first time, and they were wondering why Red Shoes was the referee on that.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that's right.
This was after the earthquake in 2011, beginning of April. So before the Champion Gates that replaced the Real Goku show. Yeah. For people who don't know, you guys know, but for people that don't know and want the context of what the hell we're talking about, there used to be a referee. His name was Kenta Tamaoka. He was part of the third Ultimo Dragon gym class with Saito Ryo is the GM, is the one from that class that made it. But he was like kind of the first example of someone that was in the system. You know, he was in Mexico training, but he wasn't any good and had injuries. But he ended up staying to become a staff. He became a referee, and he was the heel referee for Muscle Outlaws. If you go back and watch all that, he was the guy that was the heel referee. And he was one of him and Kanda were the primary referees from 2002, and Kanda came back, and so it was Kanda, Yagi, and this guy. In 2011, he got this fucking guy off the clock. This is off the clock. He got busted in a rest stop for, he was doing. It was a stimulant is what they call it, but he was doing speed in a rest stop, and he got arrested, and that's why you've never heard of him, because that was the end of him. He got fired that night. Vague press release at 1:30 a.m. and then when the police report came out, they had to acknowledge it. But yeah, Kenta, that guy, fired for a contract violation,
and has never been heard from again. I don't think.
Nope. He was mosaic on a lot of stuff for a long time. When they would show highlights, past clips, or on DVDs and things like that, they mosaicked his face for a really long time, because he did time. He was in jail for however long. He never came back. Yeah, the other referee, Oya, he's a wrestler now. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about.
Vaguely, because it always was at that time period. Kenta was always the super recognizable one, and then Yagi and Kanda, of course, you would know because of the wrestling kind of past. So Oya just kind of sometimes with like some of the referees that kind of come and go. I remember him existing, but I couldn't put a face to him.
Yeah, he was another. He was probably dojo class 2006, 2007, around that time, and he had some kind of injury, and he also wasn't that good. So he was a
part of
referee.
next with the rest of them.
He was the next referee.
Okay, now I know. I remember him from the big photo with Abe Kamada and MCKZ and in a LaDainian Tomlinson jersey. Yeah,
and he wrestled Tamaoka on like the Muscle Outlaws show. They did like a referee versus referee match, and so Kenta could bully him and squash him and hit him with like a super dangerous styles clash. And he like ran away in the middle of the night one night and was never heard again. But like he's 38, 39 years old, and he debuted as a wrestler at Yaki's thing, the
American.
Yeah, and like the Friday fight and at Ring Soul, like he's a wrestler over there. Like, wait a minute, like, who is that? I've seen him fail. Like, no shit, it's fucking Oya. He's still alive, still in Kobe, and he's wrestling now. How about that?
Huh.
Funny, it's an interesting story. So never say never in pro wrestling. You never know. People come back all the time.
I guess like if you are a real Dragon System head traveling to Japan, it's not trying to go find wherever in Chofu secret base it's running. You got to get to Kyoto, you got to get to Ring Soul, because you'll get to see Shisha and probably like former Dragon System referees wrestle. Like, it seems like Ring Soul is the place you got to go on Fridays.
Yeah, like Yaki, they have like a wrestling school type thing because they have the ring in the
Yeah.
restaurant. I mean,
Is Shisha
Tanizaki,
teaching there?
he comes and teaches every now and then.
Hmm.
From what I understand, I think they have rotating. Like Tanizaki is there. Tanazaki's a lunatic, but
Do Tanizaki and Shisa still have beef with each other?
Tanazaki's a lunatic. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
like super lunatic. I think if you're talking like there's no such thing as never in pro wrestling. Hanazaki's about as close to never as you can get, above probably everyone else.
Really?
Yeah, he's a lunatic. He's he's probably Gamma too, but Gamma wasn't a Ultimo Dragon Gym child.
He
So
he married into the family.
Yeah,
it's a little different.
No one's going, man, I hope Gamma comes back. That's fine.
Yeah. Tanazaki's. Yeah.
Just from a personality standpoint, or is he like a crazy political guy, or what's his deal?
He is like an anti-vax conspiracy theory guy, but he's also just like, I don't know. He's like talks shit all the time, even though he's a nobody.
Interesting.
Yeah. He's always. I mean, this was a few years ago, but he was like when Gamma retired, the Gamma retirement show, and they're all like everybody sent flowers, and nobody from Dragongate sent flowers to the show, and Tanizaki was on his Instagram posting pictures of all the bouquets, and he was like, "Wait a minute, there's no flowers from anyone from Dragongate." Yeah, they probably can't afford to buy flowers to send. Ha 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 ha. Stuff like that,
Okay.
Like
interesting.
Wrestlers are childish.
Very much so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike, you want to talk about?
I mean, just like Blade has never used him. Just use that as kind of your reference.
That is the real toxicity test right there. If you can't get into that room of broken toys.
Shima versus Nakajima singles match, I believe, has either just happened or is coming up. Do we want to do a half hour on?
What did Onizuka do? Man, what is going on? Like, there's been a lot of bad mojo in pro wrestling this year. Like I don't know how much of these like small all you mentioned Dragon Bane. God, well, it probably would have been 30 minutes ago. We're talking about the Korakuen Hall show, but there's been so much of that. Like there, him. There was just Rina on the Stardom show a few days ago. There was Sekimoto. There was, Takanashi in DDT. There's been a lot of really scary stuff going on in the ring. There's the All Japan kid that the All Japan tour bus ran him over, and he's been in ICU for he's like 20, 22 years old, I think, and like critical condition for 3 weeks, and that was 3 weeks ago. We haven't heard anything, good news or otherwise. And now Blade has Onizuka just committed a contract infraction, and he's like one of Shima's boys, so that he had to do something bad.
I know you don't keep up with them at all. I kind of have. I think it's like a Wookiee life step to keep track of these kinds of things. They went all in on Oni basically as like strapping him up. They finally put a belt on Yamamura with him on it, and it was very clear that they're like, well, we're at this point, we got to push someone. We're choosing on Izuka, and then this happens.
Yeah, two titles, right? Two titles, and he was the fan. They made him like the fan club president?
Any way possible. He won that the dumb 7-minute gimmick belt, and then the tag match where you want to talk about scary things. He almost took a complete header on his finish in that match against SB and Taku. on a shooter.
Did you see the Korean kid?
Oh yeah, that was terrifying with the AAA guy. Like, so for those who don't know, when they brought in AAA guys into Glate, there was a match with JD Lee with I think it's Belisagor is the guy's name, where he went over the top and went like from like the top rope to straight to the floor. The loudest shriek that happened on that show was that.
Was it like a superplex?
It was like a superplex that he was like outright dropped.
Like they fell. It was like Jimmy Jacobs powerbomb,
right? Yeah,
type of
exactly.
Type of accident, right?
Yeah,
like that was
that's a good way to describe it. Yeah, there was a shriek that you do not hear very often in that building or any sort of commotion around this promotion, and then the air of it is already toxic and just bad vibes throughout it, but it just took on a different tint.
And did they drag him back into the ring and make him take the finish too?
Yeah, no, they went pretty much straight to finish and then rolled him under the ropes and got him out of there.
He was on the floor. How do you go straight to? Why do you roll him back in the ring and make him take the finish? Insane.
Well, you know who was teaming with the AAA guys on?
Yes, I know who was teaming with them.
That's exactly why they made the kid get back in there. But it was if it was happened in a promotion that people actually paid attention to versus seeing, hey, we're going to watch it because it's free, or I'm not paying $8 a month for that, it would have been a much bigger like social media outcry. I feel like, because it easily was like one of the scariest moments I've seen in a long time in a wrestling ring.
These accidents, the people leaving companies, Sekimoto, JTO is probably going under. Big Japan probably going under. The countdown is on for Glade. The countdown's been going on for Ice Ribbon for, however, since the minute.
Does Ice Ribbon have anyone under contract anymore after what happened last year?
I have no idea, but they'll probably survive.
Them and Big Japan will find a way.
No, not Big. I think them and 0-1 will find a way. Big Japan sounds, with Sekimoto gone, it sounds like we're on the countdown for them.
You don't think they'll just keep it open as like a vanity for Kojika until he passes?
I don't know, man. I mean, it's possible, but it seems like the writing is like really on the wall for them. And Glate too, they can keep it going, but it seems like I think they've gone all in on Katsuhiko, which is like they could be banking on the idea. Okay, we go in all in on Katsuhiko for a while, we beat him, and he goes away, and then following Noah got rid of him and got hot. All Japan got rid of him and got hot. That they're kind of hoping that maybe when they get rid of him, they'll get hot, counting on casting out the harbinger of doom.
I mean, the bigger problem they're going to have is that they don't even like they can't even run Korakuen anymore. They found like this like void room Gotanda that like they get like 300 people in Tokyo, and that was their anniversary show instead of running Tokyo Dome City Hall.
Well, Tokyo Dome City Hall. There was something happen with Tokyo Dome City Hall that makes it even more expensive to run. I think it got, it changed.
Did they just raise it again? They used to be 3 times Korakuen.
Kanadevia Hall is what it's called now. It's like someone bought naming rights, which
Yeah.
But what you're saying is valid, though, that they had to, rather than find another 1,000-seat venue, they had to downsize their anniversary show to a 300. And they admitted that it was downsizing.
Yeah. You can't hide that.
But they're running fucking Buntai on November 3rd, which is like, that's a pretty big. That's like 15,000 seats.
Yeah, because the B League's there, right? like the Yokohama. I don't remember what their team name is, but like, yeah, no, it's like a full basketball arena.
Well, this is where Stardom did like their big show last year.
Yeah, this is the one
right?
that they did 2,400 for the Tom retirement or that, right? Oh, no, Tom was at
24,000?
Sumo Hall, I thought.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think I just have my dates mixed up. Yeah, no, that was Grand Slams. That was at Yokohama Arena, not Buntai.
Yeah, Buntai was last year, if I'm not mistaken. Hold on, I'm gonna look it up and see what they. Yeah, sorry. But yeah, anyway, it's insanity. You know, you do 600 people in Korakuen Hall, and you're gonna run this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You know, more power to them. It's on November 3rd, and you know we're gonna be. Gate of Destiny got announced today. I don't know if you guys saw that. Gate of Destiny is officially 2 days in number 2 because number 1 is closed. That's kind of the long and short of it.
And with how they kind of switched at least the end of February, early March, 2 shows and ED on 2 away from Champion Gate, do you think they would just call this? I know it's already marked as Gate Destiny 1 and 2. Did you think that we're probably going to anticipate card makeups where you would have two belts one night, 2 belts the other night, or do you think they're going to try to have a different format for this?
More than likely, yes. I think more than likely, yes, and that's probably specifically why they didn't do a Champion Gate this time. But you know, I don't know because next year the Champion Gate would likely be the last shows in Edion at all for 2026. Right,
because they're flipping between 1 and 2.
Well,
and
no, the entire building is closed next year. 1 and 2 are going to be closed next year.
So is that a change? Because I remember for a while it was like, okay, 1's going to be down, but you're still going to be able to run 2 for a little bit, but then 2's going to come down, and then you can run 1 a little bit. So the whole building is going to be shut down.
It's basically 1 is closed. This is closed until January. From January to April, both will be open, and then from April to the end of the year, the entire building is down because it's electrical.
Yeah, and I mean that's a building that
everybody,
and it's been there forever for the like it's been the sumo building since like the 60s out there. So I mean I thought
it's construction season. You know, it's good that it's getting renovations because if it wasn't getting renovations and they were just letting it turn into something, that would mean that it might close. So the fact that they're spending money on renovation means we get at least another 10 years out of it.
Yeah, no, and at least for how things are looking into 2026, then I mean, do we know? I know that you talked about on Blue Sky the new building in Nagoya that's opening up. That seems to be the like magic kind of number for at least for non-New Japan promotions to run it. Do we think that we can expect anything like that getting announced in a couple months or not?
For Osaka?
Yeah. Oh no, for Nagoya, the new Nagoya building.
Oh well, it's gonna be like a they said 10,000 seats.
Mm-hmm.
The access is not great, not the worst. The access is probably not a deal breaker, but it all comes down. It's a brand new venue. How expensive is a brand new venue going to be to run? I haven't had a chance to talk to UT about it. I don't know if you even knows about it. But if it's super expensive, then it's probably not worth it. But you just have to wait and see. Hopefully it's reasonable. UT has pretty good, has good sponsors down there that might be willing to help, tip in and bring a big show back to Nagoya. You gotta remember, not Congress Center is closed now too, so there's going to be nothing in Nagoya for 2027. Like it's just going to be Tsuyohashi. The idea is essentially Tsuyohashi right now they only use like the floor, but there's a set of there's like a second floor stand
Okay.
that
Yeah.
they're hoping that they can that you can eventually build to start opening more and more of this Tsuyohashi venue to make it worthwhile. There's that there's the Chunichi Hall, I think it's called. Marigold and Stardom and maybe DDT have run there before, but the Dragon Gate ring won't fit, is what I heard. Too small for the Dragon Gate ring. So you can't use it.
Well, we kind of talked about the main event, at least of Kobe World, around it a little bit, with YAMATO defending against Shun Skywalker for the Dream Gate. At what point did you kind of lock in and go like, oh, this is the clear Dream Gate program? Because I can't speak for Case, but for me, after the defense against Mochizuki and Shun showed up, I was like, oh, I should have known this from January 16th onwards, that this is the program that's going to be the main event.
Yeah, like I said before, my assumption was always going to be if there wasn't a turn from Shun in the cage match, and I think we talked extensively about that, and it ended up just being the simplest result rather than all the complicated ones. But I was always under the assumption that it would be Yamato Shun, but I was going under the assumption that Shun would lose and it would lead to the babyface turn. So the stipulation threw me and made me doubt. My headcanon booking was thrown out the window, which means, of course, I'm going to be completely irrational, regardless of what happened, because my headcanon didn't happen.
Which is entirely fair. Mike, you want to talk about Yuki Yoshioka at Korakuen Hall?
Yeah, I've been Yuki Yoshioka. He has I just find all the build that they've done with him really kind of interesting. I was the one who kind of was like, when as soon as I saw it was an X, my brain was going, oh, they have to be bringing Tanahashi in for him. And I knew the Gifu aspect. I did not know the whole, oh, he actually played on Tanahashi's baseball team, like at high school, same high school kind of aspect with it. But Yoshioka getting kind of a heavy promo cut on him by Dragongate on Thursday. He's still kind of in this rebuild thing. My original idea when Kobe World was coming about, I thought that, okay, as soon as it wasn't going to be Yoshioka, Shun doing like the heel loss to the babyface turn is what I was expecting, because I kind of, in the back of my mind, I was going, oh, the rebuild of Yoshioka does kind of feel like the thing for a monster kind of title run to end it there. But Yoshioka, I know, Casey, you've been a little bit more kind of trepidatious about him, at least in like after the cage, and like where is Yoshioka kind of going. But I thought the match with Big Hug, that was or Not Hug. Not Hug is whenever Doi and DK get in the ring. I know that it's also like kind of like their later chapters of their career doing this tag team work, but my mind immediately goes to like, am I seeing some of the best tag team wrestling in company history? I don't know, but it is with two of the best tag team wrestlers in the company's history with that. But Yoshioka, I've just been kind of fascinated about, and his return and the lead to it. How do you think, at least for Yoshioka and the specter of like Tanahashi as like this X here, where are you kind of fitting on the Yoshioka reconstruction tour so far?
Well, I mean, I think there's absolutely only one result that can come out of this match, and that's Yoshioka pins him with the frog splash. Tanahashi wins the G1. Yoshioka comes out at the end, so they beat you at World. I'm coming to, and I'm your retirement opponent. He retires Tanahashi, steals the high fly flow, and we all move on.
Does this mean that like he becomes then the lineal best wrestler in Gifu since Tanahashi beat Stalker Chikawa, of course?
Yeah. Yeah. And then at some point, Yoshi beats Yoshioka and takes it from him.
I think I'm sold.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, Tanahashi giving him permission to call his frog splash the high fly flow is probably what we want out of this, right?
I think that'd be huge. That'd be a huge seal of approval.
Yeah, I do know that Tanahashi has a New Japan wrestler in mind that he wants to pass the high fly flow to. But I think that's kind of what we want out of this. But yeah, Yoshioka's the guy. There's been moments kind of since the cage match. He's had a couple singles matches in Sapporo with KZ. He had a singles match. He had a singles match with Ben-K, and then where you kind of get those glimpses of what he was doing when he was the Dreamgate champion. He hits the battle hook and he gets that look in his eye, and he has that smile and that glare, and he goes up to hit the frog splash and all that. But then he gets cut off. Whereas when he was Dreamgate champion, like that was it. Once he got that look in his eye, the match was over. So it's still in there, but he's just got to figure out where it is. And the person the big superstar that came from the same hometown as him uses the frog splash because of this guy and all that. It's a great story. Great. And does he jump right to the Dreamgate, or does he have to vanquish Kiksta first? Or does he vanquish or does Kiksta get the Dreamgate at some point and Yoshioka vanquishes him there?
I kind of like the mirroring that could happen if it's that with the schedule going to be like what it is. If King of Gates moved a little bit sooner, you have to have him run through King of Gate first before getting to Kakuta. I feel like it would put him in that rare 2-time King of Gate winner category for Yoshioka. But I do feel like with the amount of we basically got to see for 3 months, at least from when he returned through Rey de Parejas into the cage, really just him kind of floundering, and in a way, like we thought that was the start of his rehabilitation road. No, his rehabilitation road started at Dolphins Arena, and I feel like having at least like that sort of, and maybe it's old hat going like, oh, he should win King of Gate, then get the belt here. But I feel like for this kind of rehabilitation and like the idea that he had to go and face his mentor in Kobe a couple months back. He had to go. He had a Mochizuki match, and I feel like that to have that kind of road back, maybe making sure that it's double underlined with the King of Gate before that match of Kakuta. That's where I would go. But I do feel like if it's not going to be Yamato dropping it to Yoshioka at the end of the year, Kakuta does feel kind of like the right person if you're just talking about Yoshioka's story and not just like the overall situation with the promotion. I feel like that, yeah, Kakuta's the guy. I just wonder how long you want to string it out until.
I've been really hot and cold on Yoshioka since his return, and it makes sense given his injury and how long he was off, that it's not like he was going to hit the ground running and be the 2022 Yuki Yoshioka all over again. I felt like in the June Korakuens, I was like, all right, we're back. This is who I want. He's showing a ton of fire. He's super engaging. And then like this Korakuen match, I thought was a total nothing match. I was really disappointed by it. And so I'm I'm of the belief of like, if they're going to go from this Tanahashi match into a Dreamgate match, he better lose that Dreamgate match. You know, whether it's against Yamato or Shun or Kakuta or whoever. I don't feel like he's at a point where he's performing consistently enough to where you can once again have him lead the company.
But it's also the angle.
Yeah, but I there's nothing that I see in the actual work that he's doing that would make me go like, oh yeah, that's, you know, if the options are, if it's a 4-headed dragon between Yamato, Shun, Kakuta, Yoshioka, I'm going to do what I can to have the belt on Yamato, Shun, or Kakuta, because I think the work that they are doing is lapping what Yoshioka's doing right now.
Oh, I think when you got like the glimpse of him, like you were saying in Sapporo, like there was a moment where you got to see kind of the Terminator look on Yoshioka that you got to see. It's just that he's not able to fully tap into that yet. That's why I kind of like how long and drawn out this could be, because it shouldn't be him going in there with Sahara or Kazuma and just like beating the crap out of them. I feel like it's going to have to take those kinds of higher level opponents like your KZs. Like the one thing that, and not to go full completely fan book kind of situation here with it, the one person that that if I was doing the Yuki Yoshioka gets his groove back storyline and I was with the pencil, you almost kind of want him to like have to face the people he faced in his Dreamgate run to bring that back a little bit. And we're not getting Eita back here, so that's not going to happen. But that's kind of where my mind kind of goes with how long you want to take to build back up Yoshioka. I think you got to do the big names. Tanahashi is as big as it gets, and then kind of start from there to see those glimpses in like the big matches before you get to kind of see it in the day in, day out stuff.
Yeah, and the Mochi match is kind of the one to really look at out of all these the recent singles matches that he's done, because he got to the Terminator mode, like you said, but got cut off and couldn't beat him. Didn't lose, but he couldn't beat him. And the story of that match where he came out after, either in the ring backstage or on social media somewhere, and he was talking about, I beat this guy with ease 3 years ago, and now he's 55 years old, and now I can't beat him. What's wrong with me? Like that's what we need to be looking at on a lot of these singles matches and a lot of the things that he's doing right now. And whether it's and I remember he missed 15 months with eye surgeries. It's not easy to get back into it, particularly right to March, April, right when he was coming back. Like that was someone whose career might have been over, and it's real, that he has trained different, his body's different. He had to learn how to bump again, and he had to learn how to bump in a way that he had to change all of that, keeping in mind that his eye was damaged before, and now that it's surgically repaired, it's never going to be 100% again. It could be 99.9%, but there's that 0.1%. So there is still a lot of Yuki Yoshioka, the human, getting used to becoming Yuki Yoshioka, the wrestler, again, but under different circumstances. So, that being said, KOG would be way too fast. If KOG starts, say, in September, KOG's end of the year, and it leads to Final Boss with whoever in Fukuoka, yeah. But if KOG's anytime earlier, then I think, one, I wouldn't do a league this year. I would do a tournament. But I would run him out in the first round. Just, whether it be from Kikta coming in and hitting him over the head with a chair, or if he just, whatever, loses to someone, I don't know, pick somebody, loses to Daiki on a fluke. I wouldn't, absolutely not have him win KOG if it's before the end of the year.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I guess we haven't really talked about Love and Peace so far on this episode, Jay. But the semi-main event of Kobe World, Kota Minoura, Jason Lee, MinoLee making a defense of the Open the Twin Gate champions against now the two leaders of Love and Peace and members of the 2016 Dojo class, Ben-K and Hyo, and it. Love and Peace, I think I'm more into them necessarily, maybe a little bit more than Case, because I know Case how strong a place you have for gold class, especially how they ended out with these 5 guys. Love and Peace feels like a different kind of face unit that we've seen in kind of recent years. Maybe it's more successful at what they're trying to accomplish than maybe other attempts at it, but there's a part of me, Jay, and I want to see if I'm way off the track here with this, but there's a part of me that when I look at Hyo and Ben-K, and especially the Love Peace Contra gold class match that we had last month, and seeing just kind of how lighthearted and just in genuine, it's funny, but it's not comedy wrestling for the attentive comedy. What I'm getting to is I'm getting a Major Jimmy's kind of vibe from these 5 guys, at least so far. How has been your response to Golden Peace so far since the rebrand?
I think we're supposed to think of Monster Express rather than the Jimmy's.
Well, they are wearing orange.
Orange, and the origins of Monster Express were, we just want to make pro wrestling fun again. We're going to hold hands, but we're also a unit of like. We're also kind of a super group,
right?
So I think that's more what we should be looking at them at. I do think they kind of invalidate the existence of natural vibes entirely, but I think we've talked about whether the existence of natural vibes is still necessary for going on probably 3 years of doing these podcasts.
Fair, yeah.
It was a joke, like the Love and Peace thing. Ben-K just came up with it as a joke. He was kind of riffing through what he was going to say to Hyo. Like, they told him just like, okay, just come up with something as a signing bonus type of thing. And Love and Peace was just something he came up with on the spot. So, I didn't think but I guess somebody ended up liking it, and they ran with it. It's cool, I do think they need. It was, while it is ironic that Gold Class was interesting for 3 months and then sucked for 3 years, and then when they finally came around is when it ended. But none of the original members are there. Doi's a freelancer, Minoura is a heel. The other guy's completely gone. You don't want to get into keeping the name for a long time because you're not sure if the new unit's going to get an entrance song or not. You shouldn't be afraid to rebrand. So it's fine. I think it's good. To that end, I also hope that we get a Z-Brat rebrand if Shun gets kicked out at some point.
Oh, if they kick Shun out, they have to rebrand. I think that'd be insane not to. I think Love and Peace, the 5 guys that make up that unit, it's my favorite unit in the company now because I think the ceiling of what they can do is incredible. I don't love the branding, like I said earlier. The Kame's insistence on wearing ugly gear and now Rita joining him in that. Say it again.
That's just him. I think Kame is very much on like the Mark Simpson Chanel dress type of thing, in that you doesn't necessarily want to spend to get entirely new ring gear made, so he just keeps breaking out, just sending the old gear back to the sewing machine to get recolored.
It's mind blowing that he's as good of a wrestler as he is, and yet he looks as bad as he does.
It's awful. Yeah, it is awful. Rita's costume is loud. I guess. What else? I love Ben-K going back to the long pants though.
Yeah.
Definitely a big fan of Ben-K going back to that look.
Ben looks great. Hyo looks great. Junior looks great. You know, if I was going to rank out my 3 favorite wrestlers in the company, it would be Shun Flamita Jr. So we've got one of my guys in this unit, Kame and Rita. I'm completely obsessed with. I think they're one of the best tag teams in wrestling this year. And I think the Ben and Hyo team is super exciting. So I love this unit. I think it's just going to take me a little bit longer to embrace the branding. And again, the gear thing could be a real issue.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, they look like cream. The creamsicle color scheme is a choice, but I think the sum of the parts work, despite the name being kind of a total meme and the theme song just being New Rose by the Damned. But yeah, no, I'm all big fan of Love and Peace. I think it was I thought it was a corny name like everybody, but when they rebranded. When they actually did it, like I got like I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. I was sold on it pretty quickly after it happened.
Yeah, no, I like the colors a lot, so I'm rooting for them. I hope it goes well. I think they have the potential if they really want to just run whatever combination of Z-Brats or whatever the heel unit becomes versus Love and Peace for the next 6 months. I think those are the 2 units that have the highest ceiling with one another. I really like their chemistry. Yeah,
agreed. I think you can have that kind of be, and we've seen it since over the last 2 weeks. From Korakuen, Fukuoka, Kyoto, back in Korakuen again. It's been Z-Brats versus Love and Peace in various constellations. The elimination match in Fukuoka was great.
I loved it.
The stuff in Korakuen has been really good. The three-way is good. The three-way is going to be pretty insane, I think. Which of the 2 do you think? I think they're only walking out with one title max out of the 2. Might end up being 0, but I think 1 max. So which of the 2 would you go with if only one of the 2 Love and Peace teams could win? What are you going with?
I think they're a mortal lock for the Twin Gate belts. I would be stunned if they lost that. I think Z-Brats will retain the Triangle Gate, but I would be absolutely stunned if Ben and Hyo lost in the Twin Gate match.
Interesting. My thinking is kind of the other way around.
Okay, sell me on that because now I'm curious.
This is just more kind of a gut feeling and reading the tea leaves than something I'm sold on myself. But I kind of have a feeling that it's going to be like a belt shot, nut shot, interference type of ending to the Twin Gate. Otherwise Minoru has nothing to do.
Yeah, that would be disappointing because I was thinking last night when I was starting to get my thoughts together for the show, I was like, man, that Ben and Hyo team is really fresh. They have very good chemistry. We saw that in Las Vegas when they team with one another, and it was like, oh wow, that's a thing. That's a thing they could very easily run with, and they have. I obviously think the world of Jason and think the world of this Jason Minoru team, but they've been champions for 6 months. They've had 2 defenses, and a Ben and Hyo Twin Gate run I think would be a total shot of the arm for that division. I'd really like to see that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I 100%. If it were up to me, Love and Peace would walk out with both titles, but I think at best they're getting 1.
I would agree with that. I almost feel like in that Triangle Gate match again, I think Z-Brats would retain, but well, I was gonna say because you've got Monte and Flamita sticking around, but Bendito seems to be going home after World, right?
Yeah. What do you guys think? What do you guys think of him? I haven't. There's been times that he's been pretty bad.
Yeah.
But in general, he's been fine. But I also wouldn't if we never see him again. I wouldn't be bothered.
Okay, so this is where I've landed is if he gets a second tour, great. I'm all for anybody getting over in Dragongate. I wish they had the budget to have a few more, whether it be American indie guys or lucha guys on the roster. I've always liked that aspect of this promotion. Do I think Bendito has done anything that would warrant Dragongate spending the money on a plane ticket for a second tour? No, I do not. You know,
Yeah.
you look at the
Yeah,
work that
same.
Flamita consistently does. I mean, Flamita just he blows me away. I can't believe
Flamita also seriously injures somebody every time he comes over.
that is tremendously unfortunate. You're right. But at the very least, there's work there with Flamita that I think is incredible. The
Yeah.
Bendito thing, it's you know, it's the problem with him is that it's take him or leave him. You know, he hasn't left a really strong impression, and he's had the time to do so. You know, he's been over here since the beginning of May now, so I don't feel like he's going to be coming back.
I feel like he's a little situational, though. Like, there's some guys, like Rita, having him against Rita in this match really helps out. Because I feel like that it seems like, for lack of better words, like guys who are willing to kind of fly around and at least work around him seem to be doing best work with him. And at least, like, I think that overall, Bendito, like, I don't think he's having as bad of a tour, say, as like the initial days of Diamante, but I do think that if you're trying to, it's not like dissimilar from what's his name. I'm blanking on him. He ended up doing vice principals after he got injured. Case the guy with Gabe's ring.
Oh, Peter Casa.
Yeah. I do feel like it's not dissimilar to how Peter Casa really was a case of you want to have the right people around him to make it work here. And I feel like you almost get that with this, at least Bendito in the three-way.
Yeah, I would kind of, like, if you were asking me to place Bendito somewhere, I would have him somewhere above Jimmy, but below Peter Casa.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Because Casa at least was like spectacular.
He really was. The bummer with Bendito is there's just other guys that I would rather see in that position. I would rather see the Panther brothers actually wrestle in Dragongate and not just train there, or some of the guys in Vegas that we saw. I feel like they'd be better fits.
Marcus Mathers.
I'd bring him over in a heartbeat. I don't know if he can with the... Now, I don't know what's left of WWE ID. You know, that idea has completely flamed out, but...
Really?
Oh, I mean, I don't... Mike, do you hear anybody talk about ID anymore?
The only time you hear ID talked about is, at least after WrestleMania weekend, because ID kind of was the topic of the week, in case if you remember. Mm-hmm. But it does seem like the only times it kind of pops up when it's doing a booking against someone from a notable parent company, like if someone from AEW is on a card against Marcus Mathers. Like, my only thing that I have about Marcus was it was during that Wednesday night Dragongate USA show. I saw a pretty good amount of Marcus Mathers before WWE ID, and him coming out and immediately doing like hard cam working and going like, oh wow, they've already indoctrinated him a little bit. But I've thought that whenever Dragongate has been in the US, the people that have worked best with the Dragongate guys, I would say Marcus Mathers probably is number one, outside of people like Swan, who of course have that backstory and history with Dragongate to kind of do that. Like, if Mathers is available and you don't have to deal with any of Gabe Sapolsky's histrionics, I'd go for it.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick, if not Bendito, who, then I'd be bringing Kukui in a heartbeat.
Yes. And we saw them team together in Vegas, Bendito and Kukui, and we were like, oh, well, that's something. The way those two guys look is really compelling at the very least. But after seeing Bendito solo on a tour, I think I would rather see Kukui than Bendito.
Yeah. For Mather, I guess I don't see what value there would be. I mean, he's a great wrestler, of course. Mm-hmm. So, aside from he can come in and have great matches, I guess as long as there's the specter of, again, I don't really know exactly what being WWID entails.
I don't know if anybody does at this point.
Is it like a letter of intent to a college type of thing, and that you've committed to go there after a certain time, or is it like someone, like, you got drafted and now someone owns your rights and they can?
That's more my read. And for Mather specifically, it's, you know, at some point, if he actually organically catches on, he's going to be signed to a real contract in a heartbeat, and he'll have to cancel, 3 months of booking that they won't let him do anymore. So he's going there one way or another. It's just a matter of when that happens.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going with it.
Yeah.
In that, why waste the money on a flight for him to come in for, a tour? And sure, maybe, great matches, but I don't think WWE ID is a drawing point. Like, it's like WWE fans are not going to say, oh, this guy's WWID and he's in Dragongate, so let's watch Dragongate because he's there. It's just, they're going to be WWE fans and just look down on it until he gets called up, and then, whatever. So this WWE guy went to Dragongate and had these great matches because he's WWE talent, or whatever the fuck they say. But
yeah,
I don't see wasting the money and the time on a flight to bring him in, push him, give him matches. There's no point in bringing him in and having him put over everybody. And have him lose to everybody. He can come in and lose to Daiki, Fuda, Sahara on consecutive nights and then go home. But that's not. I don't think that helps anybody. And as long as at the end of the day, if you're bringing somebody in for one of these tours, you're hoping that there's a reason to bring them back at the end. And I think for someone that's WWE ID, that you can't count on that. So it's hard. It's hard in that aspect.
Yeah, and then you're kind of getting into like what we've talked about on past episodes with you, Jay, in that why should Dragongate then invest in someone and have them take up a bus seat and a spot on the cards when who's to say one day Triple H decides, hey, Marcus, we want you now. Like, you don't get anything out of it in the end. And the WWID thing, that's not going to be, and you'd be a better judge of this than I am, but I would guess that the idea of having someone as WWEID going over to Japan means absolutely nothing to the fan base as like a draw of value. So why invest in that when you could have someone in the dojo either natively or it's an international wrestler committing to Dragongate? Why have the person
to be a Dragongate wrestler? Yeah,
right. Yeah. So I feel like it kind of, and in its way, kind of turns out to be kind of that old conundrum kind of popping up again with him.
Yeah, 100%. So I think that's kind of. I'm personally kind of at the point where, well, we got Monte, we got Ho Ho, Fumita when he comes in. I kind of think that's enough right now. When Fuda isn't getting booked, isn't getting matches, when Aki isn't getting matches, when Kimura is debuting in a month and is going to be, fighting for matches. I don't really think this is the time to be, spending money on flights for guys who may or may not get over. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And it's also a situation like we just taking like this Kobe World card at its whole and looking at it kind of that way. You're already like struggling to find places to put your problem dragons and your Sachioko boys, and the people that show up only for like these kind of cards. So then are you really, when you want to find a reason to put Kagatora on a Kobe World card when he's not in a title situation, is it really worth giving up like that kind of spot for the potential of someone else coming in for it? And I feel like I'm largely with you. Like if there was some international young wrestler who wanted to go through the system and go through it for Dragongate, that's one thing. But it's just as we've seen through time, Jay, that those kinds of individuals truly end up being far and far between, and then the specter of money always kind of comes into it if they're an international wrestler down the line.
Yeah. I mean, it just doesn't. Pac, Ricochet, Uha. Those guys were 15 years ago now?
Yeah.
More than 15 years. I mean, Pac was almost 20 years ago. Seidel was almost 20 years ago. Ricochet was only around for 3.5 years, before New Japan picked him up. And it's like people of that level of talent are going to be all elite or assigned to NXT long before they have a chance to make a Pac, Ricochet, Uha level reputation in Dragongate. New Japan's different. New Japan's different. But even then, like I don't have the impression that they have the highest. The days of Kenny and Ospreay and AJ Styles are far behind the foreigners over there. Well, I mean, Saber's champion again, I guess. But
Gabe Kidd's really good, but whatever they're doing with him booking is not helping.
Yeah, I think last time we talked, some guy I'd never heard of was getting an IWGP title.
Oh, Callum Newman. And that match ended up being fantastic. It was Newman and Goto. It was really good.
Was it? I thought it was good. Good. It sucks for Goto.
Yeah,
Man,
that really does suck.
That sucks. I mean, I don't know if he got injured, so they've got Forbidden Doors in London?
Forbidden Doors in London, yeah.
And then they have Copper Box probably a couple months after that, too.
Yeah, there you go. So, there you go.
Jay, what do you know about the Kid debuting in August?
I know nothing about him. Actually, I haven't. Hopefully, I can get my debriefing on him this weekend. Like, it's like I believe he has a judo background.
Okay, I like that.
I believe he has a judo background. Don't quote me on that because again, like I said, I haven't talked to him directly yet. But it's fast. Like his exhibitions were like 2 weeks ago or two. Yeah. Like he started exhibitions. Did he have one? Was he doing them in Sapporo? No, because that was Tsujiguchi and Oshima.
It's also, they were rerunning Oshima because Oshima's from Hokkaido, right?
From Hokkaido, yeah. And Kimura and Kame's dad didn't start doing future matches until like June. So like his turnaround is super fast.
Interesting.
Super.
And is he 18, 19, I guess, with that being that fast of a turnaround?
No, they're both, him and Kame's dad are both 23.
Okay.
He's 23, looks 23. Kame's dad is 23, looks 63.
Hey, some of us get this curse, Jay. Like, we can't help it, you know?
I was telling, I was talking to somebody about this. And, like one of the wrestlers, I was like, he looks like Kame's dad. And then they stopped and looked at it. And I've been calling him Kame's dad for 6 months. But I said it to one of the wrestlers, and they looked and they stopped, and you could see them thinking about it, and then they started laughing. So that they should do the reverse Mochizuki Jr. with it. That they have Sugihara save Kame from an attack, and Kame invites him to join to team with Love and Peace on a show, and then you reveal that his name isn't Sugihara, his name is John Kame, or Kame Senior.
and then you have him also tag with Ben, and that can be the oldest looking 20 and 30-year-old tag team ever. Because Ben-K looked 30 the second he showed up.
Yeah, and Kame can be like, Jack's my father, call me Jackie. But him, Oshima, and Tsujiguchi, like, I don't know. Tsujiguchi and Oshima have been a very long time for them now.
And with Oshima, there's always going to be the thing of waiting to see whenever they're in Hokkaido. So, like, I kind of figured if he was progressing right, then back in May would have been his debut, at least, because it's been over a year, and I know that he's done at least 2 of those tours, because that's usually when I remember, oh wait, Oshima's still in the dojo. And now are we waiting till, like, now it feels like we're waiting till December before they would probably debut him.
Yeah, and I don't, like, maybe it's just because they haven't been doing exhibitions, but like, those two really didn't show much in the Hokkaido stuff. Like Kimura, I actually did when maybe it's just because he's so much bigger than Sugihara is, that I was like, okay, but like he kind of jumped out from that. Again, I absolutely did not expect it to be this soon, but he was the one that out of the 4 showed something. So, well, apparently they think the same. So let's see what they do with him. He's good looking. He's pretty. He's got some size on him, and the voice. And he's got really unfortunate but cute voice that will make him endearing, kind of like Akihiro. They can probably put him and Akihiro together as the lisping giant.
They could be the linemen. I mean, they could get to do the football pads. I know Aki was that. A stray thought just flew into my mind. The other person that Kamei's dad and Kamei kind of look like, I don't know where he is. He kind of dropped off the map. Gotta find where Masato Yakashiji from Michinoku and Osaka Pro goes, and he can show up as their long lost uncle. I feel like
he's probably great granddad at this point.
that is true. I mean, I think he would be. I just saw the news that Tiger Mask 4 is about to retire, so like he has to be at least in his mid-50s now.
10 years too late on that guy.
Yeah, there was the moment of, wait, I thought he already did retire.
Well, talking about Mask Men and the limitations of, if Shun were to leave, that being a masked man is probably the thing that would limit him, would tap his feeling the most anywhere. But like that guy keeping the tiger mask on for 45 years or however long he's been wrestling is like, I don't know, feels like the thing that made everybody lose interest in him in during the dark ages of New Japan.
No, yeah, it's also something of, what would that guy be without that mask for over the last 15 years? Or would he just be back in Michinoku?
Who was, Sayama's maybe different, but like, who was Kanemoto before he took the mask off, right?
Yeah, no, that is true.
Who was I don't know, who was Luis Monte before he took the mask off?
No.
Who is Luis Monte?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
Sometimes I feel like I knew 2022 Diamante better than I knew 2025 Luis Monte.
Yeah, where do you think he ends up?
God, I don't know. I like him and Flamita as a team so much.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to dance.
The thing is, well, I guess it's whatever comes of D-Courage. I mean, this gives us a chance to talk about the Bravegate match here with Tanaka and Yuti. And I made the joke to Mike last week. I go, if we didn't know what the Dreamgate match was, I'd think they were pushing Tanaka for a Dreamgate challenge with how hard he's been pushed, which is great. I love a focused and well-built Bravegate match, which is what we have here. It does seem like, just based on math and bodies available, that Monte would end up in whatever becomes of this 3-man D-Courage unit, assuming they want to shuffle the deck on them. I mean, I would love to see Mochizuki Dojo, those kids get into a unit, D-Courage do something else, and throw Monte in there with them.
Yeah. The Bravegate, I think, is gonna be difficult. Because this one's kind of like, both guys have very, very logical reasons to win. I guess, from a booking, from the pro wrestling booking standpoint of it. This is one of those where you really hate to see either guy lose. I guess is maybe more how I should frame it.
the thing with UT is ultimately Tanaka, I think you're building up as a guy who one day will headline this show, and so it's worth it to have him win. We've seen the peak of UT's career. It was him winning the belt. I loved the match that he won, Dead or Alive. I loved the junior match. I would be all for it if he was Bravegate champion again and had a much longer reign, but I think they've actually perfectly served the purpose of UT as champion to get him that amazing moment in Nagoya, and then to have him continue to be a strong, incredible champion, only to get squashed like a bug by Tanaka.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of where I am. Like, I think if it were me, I wouldn't say squashed like a bug, but
no, but a dominant win, I should say.
I mean, this would be Joker, cross saber kick out, Joker Strider, or the swan dive, the springboard one that he does, and new champion, for sure. But there's, I don't know if we probably talked about this a million times about the idea of is when you have moments. I think we were framing. God, we probably talked about this 4 years ago when it was the world double main event where it was KZ Shun and then Shun Yamato. In kind of I think we were framing it in the context of Kofi Mania at the time, where the moment Kofi winning the title, or I think in the context of that, KZ winning the title, you got the moment that was enough. And is that the case now with UT, that you had the moment and that was enough? Or is it really, really disappointing to see him finally get the moment and have it be over so quickly?
Well, in this specific context, again, it's Tanaka, and I think everybody knows that this is only the beginning for Tanaka's success at this event specifically. So I can't imagine a better use of UT where it leaves us wanting more, and it leaves the door open for now a second Bravegate run. They nailed this 12-year build essentially to him winning at Dead or Alive. It's like, okay, they got that moment. It was perfect. We all enjoyed it. He can now win it again at a Korakuen or Osaka No. 2, or, if they ever find another venue in Nagoya, they can do all of that. What I don't want is to be rolling into November for the 2-night Gate of Destiny, and UT beats Tanaka here, and then let's say he beats Rita, and then it's like, oh, is it going to be UT and Punch for the Bravegate belt at that point? That's going to be horribly depressing.
That's kind of the fear of the Bravegate in general, because it could very well be Ryoya and Punch.
That's true. That's true. But I think you couldn't have drawn up a better scenario for UT to win and then subsequently lose the title and have a defense in the middle of it. This is, when I think about it, when I really zoom out on this booking, it's actually been incredibly well built. It's phenomenal that they've gotten to this position. Everything should be telling you, okay, UT, thank you so much. You've done a great job. Congratulations on all the merch you've sold. We'll circle back to you having the Bravegate belt again in 6 months. But this is Ryoya Tanaka's time, because, based on what Tanaka's doing with his body, this might be the only time that he's able to win the Bravegate belt too.
He's like, well, he's probably the lightest he's ever been in his life at this point. With all
that's true. It's just he just looks insane. I'm kind of blown away by it, but he looks good. He just looks insane.
Yeah, they had him at 70 when he was skinny when he debuted. He's probably at around 70 right now, which is insane. How much of that is insane volume on his hair, I don't know, but yeah, I guess again, prefaces by saying, if it were me, Ryoya is walking out of this. But what has given me pause on this is I really like the idea that UT has spent so long as the underdog, spending so long as someone who was in the, I don't want to say lower tier, but as being in the rookie ranking tournament in 2019 when he was 6 years into his career, and everybody else was 1 to 3 years. How long is UT gonna be classified as a young guy? And him being so focused on winning the Brave Gate, or him being so focused on coming back from injuries, or being so focused on all these things that he didn't notice that he's suddenly become an old guy, and he's not a guy scratching at the gate, he's the guy holding the gate now. I thought that perspective was very compelling, and having him knock back some of the young guys is, I do think there is a path with that, because the potential, like you mentioned, is it going to be we get the Gate of Destiny? He's only got punch left. I think that's a Brave Gate problem, not a UT as champion problem.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I would say that we have the larger issue of that it has felt like that this has been a belt that was dominated by very few people, and then other people just always kind of hung around at the division when there was not anything else for them to do. And until kind of there are better routes out for like your Punch Tominagas, I do feel like we're firmly past the time of Mondai Ryu showing up asking for a Brave Gate title match. But you have like that this has always kind of been a sticky belt where you would have people that are usually not like featured players just out of nowhere going like, yes, I'm Punch Tominaga, I'm a former Brave Gate champion, I should have a title match here. And I think that goes back to what is this title really about. And it does feel like that when we had this tournament to crown the new one, having people like Hyo in the tournament seem to kind of tip the hand that they still kind of have this problem with the belt. I do think an argument for UT, at least, I can offer like the idea of like we've had Tanaka really be this figure throughout the last month, but in getting kind of the upper hand in matches, and at least showing that he has now the double cross saber as like another finish along with the Firebird. And there's like the aspect to UT that he showed in the Mochizuki Jr. match of basically not being a Yuki Yoshioka Terminator, but being kind of the guy that is like, oh, you're going to give me your best shot, but you're going to have to solve my problem of how I'm going to wrestle you before I get you to tap out. And I feel like you could have an aspect with that, with this Tanaka match of how much is UT able to, with like his ring skill and like the adaptation to try to get him out of those situations. And it does kind of, to me, it feels like a more compelling kind of title reign to have a guy in this as a champion who presents like a different kind of match on the card than like I feel like we can kind of think in our mind go like what Ryoya Tanaka's Brave Gate champion is. And I feel like that's a lot of other Brave Gate champions we've seen over the recent years. And maybe it's me being a UT fan and enjoying his take on Yaveo and that. But I kind of want to see him be that gatekeeper, as you're saying, Jay, and be that problem that that the young roster members have to figure out before moving up the card. And I feel like that is, at least for me, enough of a reason to want UT to retain the belt.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point of like kind of the story of his defenses so far. Like Junior pinned him with German suplex, so UT immediately set out to find a way to counter the German suplex, and he was able to successfully do that and turn it into eventually what won the match for him against Junior. And now with Ryoya, it's been figuring out the cross saber. And he's figured out ways to counter the cross saber. Like he's pinned him, like he's pinned him with a counter to it, but at the same time he's also been pinned by it. So he hasn't completely figured it out yet. So that's kind of the race against the clock. Will UT be able to figure out the way to counter the move that's been put in, like the trouble spot from his opponent, and then how he solves the puzzle at the end, I think would be a really satisfying. It would make for a very satisfying title reign, like you said. That, I don't know. I'm looking at the roster right now, and I'm trying to figure out who. So, because this is in the order that they're on the homepage. So, KZ UT for Z-Brats, only Homare. Daya Ryoya, Yamato, probably Kagetora. Ho-Ho, Fuda, Daiki, Hyo, Kame, Rita Jr., Punch, Kimata, Yosuke, and Esto are the only ones that make Bravegate wait. So there you go. Bendito has a profile on the homepage, so that probably means he's coming back.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah, it's a real interesting kind of groupings when you have to have the 82 kilos, because there are people there that you could just immediately go, Estrella is doing great stuff internationally. I don't think he's going to be doing his visa stop for a Bravegate shot. And
you have to renew the visa at some point.
Yeah, I mean, that is true.
And,
you do have to.
And in the current climate, there's no guarantee you're going to get a new one. So
no, that's fair.
I heard that there's there's a lot of Pac was the specific example, but there's a lot of wrestlers, even like AEW and WWE, that are in visa hell or visa limbo right now.
I mean, I don't know anything, but it kind of, at least to me, felt like that was the reason why, like, Claudio didn't work Arena Mexico, to me.
Okay.
Like, I know that he has a green card, but just like, I would not necessarily be wanting to chance getting back in if I had qualms,
Right. And, Esto, when did Esto leave last year? After World, right?
It was after World.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that means, clock is probably ticking on his visa. So, much to his own chagrin, he's going to have to come back to do the paperwork at some point.
And then he might be stuck in Japan.
Yeah, then we might be... Estrella Bravegate dream might come true then.
Yeah, and he's got a new look over there. He's kind of slowly kind of moved away from the alien and then like the fifth, and now he's he's got kind of the Asai inspired gear going, and like and kind of like a Yoshitsune style mask. And I haven't seen him wrestle, so I don't know. And again,
he
I'm sure
seems to be getting booked pretty consistently now.
Yeah,
and that wasn't.
Wasn't the case before.
Yeah,
right?
It wasn't the case, but no, I mean he seems to be busy, which makes me happy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if even if it's just for routine paperwork, he's going to be absolutely miserable the entire time he's back here. But
he seems to get pretty solid work in Austin too, in Texas.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, U.S. visa, Mexico visa, I guess are two totally different things, right? You could always just forego the U.S. visa and just be based out of Mexico permanently, maybe, and then fly, do Mexico, Canada, and everywhere else, and just not set foot in the U.S.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. But yeah, I mean, he seems to be getting booked, which is nice. Although I would like to see him have a few months in Dragongate. I like watching the guy work.
I'm actually now seeing him in that Asai getup. I think this is actually by far his best mask that he has, that with kind of the shoulder tassels, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, it'll be interesting with the Bravegate. Also, I mean, now firmly you could say, you could say Gucci is like fully in it. Daiki is in that division. Who's to say if Fuda gets the string together and finally get that Brave Gate shot he wanted. So it although like I feel like I can only speak for myself, I was hoping for like a completely refreshed Brave Gate division. There does seem to be options there. And then, I mean, for Tanaka, there's also talking about that doubleheader in Osaka too. There might be some urgency there about making sure he can do that appearance in his home building and have the belt there for that too. So, I mean, I think maybe I am just being a UT homer a little bit, but it does. I do feel like that this is. Whereas I feel like the Twin Gate, I'm a little bit more with Case and expecting that to be a title switch here. I think you can make an argument really for other guys here. I think it's closer to a coin flip than we like to think.
Yeah, like I said, this is one of those you hate to see either guy lose.
Mm-hmm.
In this, Buddha. Yeah. What would you do with Mochi Dojo? Because I'm kind of I'm not into it this time around at all.
I thought it served its purpose in the tag league, and
right.
Same.
Maybe Sahara's injury just threw off the timing of it, but now it's weird because you had the Daiki thing where it's like, okay, I'm not going to be the Korakuen employee anymore, but then nothing changed about him other than he's not wearing a jacket to the ring. And I was like, oh man, that's a bummer.
Doesn't have to carry the broom in his bag anymore.
Yeah, I was like, man, I thought we were going to get a much harder reset on Daiki than we did. So I'm ready to break him up and just throw him in units and see what happens. And I don't have a specific plan. You know, I held on to Fuda stock for as long as I could. I think I finally sold all my shares on Fuda. I'm not into that. But I love Daiki and I love Sahara. And I just think the quicker those guys can be integrated into a non-rookie role. I mean, for Daiki, it's 2.5 years. For Sahara, you're coming up on a year. I just want to see these guys get sort of thrown into the deep end and see what happens.
Yeah. I thought after Mochi's Dreamgate match, I thought that was where it was going to... I thought for sure that they were going to end it there. But maybe there's something else planned for in the afterworld, after Otaku.
Yeah, because then you have to think about what do you do with Mochi too, because other than
you don't have to do anything with him, you know. You can just
so he's just kind of here. Yeah, it just kind of felt like that. Oh, go ahead.
That's who he was from 2006 to 2011, and then again from 2012 to, you know. I mean, Mochi doesn't need anything, you know.
I guess like my main point of that is that at least when you had like Mochi Dojo, you would have Mochizuki teaming with these guys against the veteran unaffiliated sides, and you had a little bit of juice to the matches because it was kind of rookies versus vets there, and him going and doing like a 5-way TV title match, or going back and just doing like Mochi Fuchi and Ultimo versus Horiguchi, Sachi, and Don Fuji. I know that he will just go back to there and be fine. I just kind of like that we had some more stuff going on with Mochi this year when it felt like after M3K that was it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I think ultimately, you know, with Mochi, like you still would perk up if you looked at a card and you saw him. Oh, Mochi's teaming with Kimura on this show. You know, I don't think you need to explicitly have Mochizuki Dojo for those types of situations to be interesting, to happen and still be interesting.
Yeah, that's fair. No, and especially with the way of the undercard being what it is, being able to plug him in there and still have a little bit of juice when it is someone like that is definitely a fair thing.
Also, you know, with Mochi, you know, the story with him is always just when you think Mochi doesn't have a place anymore, he finds a way to make a place for himself. until he's 100 years old and dead, and even after he's dead, that's going to be, that's always the most interesting part of Mochi, is how he finds, just when you think he's irrelevant, he makes himself relevant again. And explicitly attaching him to Mochizuki Dojo, I think, takes away some of the intrigue of that, because it it gives chances for the heels to say things like, well, you're trying to, you're attaching yourself to these young guys to keep your own name relevant. There is that aspect to it, but I don't know.
Well,
it also, as long as it exists, you kind of have the feeling that the young guys are just,
they're slotted there.
Yeah, they're slotted. Yeah, exactly.
Well, since we're in the domain of Masaki Mochizuki, the one thing on this card that I'm struggling with, because I'm pumped for Kakuta and Strong Machine J, like I said, I'm really into all the title matches, except for this 5-way Gaora TV title match. Jay, am I looking at this the wrong way? Is this a match that I should be optimistic for? Because I'm a little bummed at all of the great wrestlers that are attached to Yoshida, or I guess I should say Takashi, in this match.
Oh, I mean, if this match didn't exist, what would they be doing?
This is the argument that I can't get past in my own head, but I just feel like there's a better option out there, and I just don't know what that option is.
Okay, looking at this.
Yeah, so Kai's the odd man out of Z-Brat, so you kind of need to plug him in somewhere.
It would be Mochi and Doi would be thrown into the opener. And then, KZ's got nothing. Well, actually, before this became a 5-way, I was thinking along the lines of they would hold the Machine J Kikta single until Otaku.
Yes.
And do Machine J KZ Kikta Kai and have it end in another no contest or no DQ, because the rest of the card is so strong that you don't necessarily need this here. So, but with the fact that Machine J Kikta is a singles match here, then there's nothing else for KZ, for KZ and Kai to do. I mean, you do a KZ Kai singles match, but I don't necessarily think that's markedly better over what this is. So, considering the fact that the rest of the card is what it is, I'm not angry.
Yeah.
Over this. And,
if this was 2022 when we were getting this match, I think I'd really have to look in the mirror. But there's 6 matches on this card that I'm super excited about, and this one.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting if a Dragongate wrestler took the championship from Takashi, because then, because Takashi, the Takashi boom is still in full swing over there. But if someone like KZ, if KZ were to win, KZ's never been over. Like, even Doi or Kai would be kind of not interesting, because Doi is a regular over there and Kai is from there. But like, sure, Mochi or KZ winning it, and now a Dragongate wrestler has firmly taken the Gaora TV championship, has taken the All Japan championship. That is a Gaora championship. I think that there's some juice in that, and and then it trades around Dragongate for a while before going, either somebody from All Japan comes and takes it back, or Takashi wins it back at the end.
So with Takashi, of course, he's now dropped Yoshida, and the YouTube is now seems to be his number one kind of outlet. We got like his YouTube theme song, one Korakuen, and the pop we got and the response from it made me a little shocked that why we didn't start just using that for now on for him, because like him coming out with the cyber number is kind of weird a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. When he came out to the regular music, Ho and I looked at each other with the same look on our face. That the absolutely should have been absolutely 100%. I'm completely with you on that.
Yeah, it's interesting, the Gaora TV aspect of it. I guess like the bit of me that wants Mochi to win it would then be like, all right, let's look at all his titles that he's won outside of the Dragon System. I feel like are really fascinating. Like he has that GHC national win, his GHC tag run, and then even like the Nosawa Gurentai or the Tokyo Gurentai shows with like those belts. I feel like if we pull up like his Wikipedia entry and we see All Japan Gaora TV champion and his like accomplishments, it feels right for Mochizuki to have that, right? Like I'm not off on a limb here.
Yeah, agreed.
Did we didn't really talk too much about Jae and Kakuta, did we, Case?
No, I think we've just glossed over it a few different times. Jay, I'm curious from your perspective. It feels like this is perhaps the most complete that Strong Machine Jay has ever felt. You know, obviously it helps that Kakuta is doing the work that he's doing, and I've been blown away by just how naturally Kakuta has transitioned from D-Courage to Z-Brats. But what are your thoughts specifically on what Strong Machine Jay has brought to this feud so far?
Machine Jay's great. He's incredible.
Yep.
You know, he takes everything very seriously. You know, like there's no going through the motions in anything with him. So when there's pressure on him, he's always delivered. I mean, last year, the arc from into the cage match into him being devastated at the first the first Bayside show to how he portrayed himself in the build up and him coming back becoming leader of Natural Vibes and everything. Like he's been doing excellent work for almost 2 years now, over 2 years now, if you consider everything leading up to the cage match. The problem is he's wearing his dad's singlet, right?
Yeah, that can't help.
Yeah.
But I also, because we've talked about that before, where it's like, okay, well, there's a look and maybe that's holding him back, but also he is Strong Machine J. And I don't know how to pivot that character unless you're going to completely rebrand him and maybe he keeps the mask, but then goes under a different name. It's
his dad was super strong machine, and Fujinami and came out and said, "You're Hirata," and then he was Hirata. So
That's true. I'd be stunned if they took the mask off him without a mask match, but
that's what I thought. That's where I thought this was going. I thought that this was finally going to be it.
And you've got Kakuta with that head of hair now. You'd almost think that they could run this back if they wanted to and do hair versus mask then.
Are they gonna shave the doo-doo braids? I don't know.
That requires a lot of time and effort. Like we see. Yeah. I did initially when I saw his hair getting grown out back earlier this year. I was like, oh, Kakuta is going to mark him for possible cage hair loss. But as soon as he started doing the braids, I was like, nah, you're not going to buzz that off now.
No, he's been great. I've been talking to some people that are trying to do Dragongate catch up before World. They want to make sure they know what's going on by the time World comes around. And the feedback that I'm getting is that they're really, really impressed with this feud. They like the way that it's been laid out. They like all the non-finishes that have happened. They feel warranted and justified in their minds, and they're really impressed with both Kakuta and Strong Machine J. I think this has been a big win for both those guys.
Yeah, they had a while. I'm assuming you guys haven't seen the Osaka show.
No, not yet.
I saw the photo that got posted with the ring barricade and Kakuta and SMJ. I'm looking forward to that. That Osaka show.
Yeah. Do you mind if I spoil? Well, when we get to the main event, I have to give a spoiler. Was there anything else on the undercard that we haven't hit yet?
No. Let's talk about the main event.
Yeah, let's do it.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just saying. Let's talk about the main event.
Okay. Well, I think we've talked a lot about the main event, but I do. What was from Yamato to the 5-minute Korakuen match? was there anything that stuck out to you from that match that happened during the match?
I thought it was kind of noticeable, at least during that. Basically, he kept on going for the blaster throughout it, and then kind of turned that blaster into that SSW to get the win. That was kind of the thing I noticed, was how kind of forced and not smooth the SSW was.
The only thing that jumped. Sorry, go ahead, Jay.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, the only thing that jumps out in my notes when I think back on that match is that Shun did the Ashla for the first time in what feels like forever.
Yeah. And he won with it today.
Okay.
First time since turning heel.
Yeah.
Where does the name come from?
Oh, that I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's a dragon.
Well, what is his name?
Oh, this is a Star Wars reference. Yeah, Ashla. It took me a second. Yeah, Ashla is a Star Wars thing.
Yeah, Ashla is the light side of the Force. And I talked to Shun a long time ago when he first turned heel, and I said, "You don't use the Ashla anymore," and he said, "Yeah, because Ashla is the light side of the Force, and
yeah, that's
so there. That's
I did not put two and two together with the Jedi part about him with that. Dang.
Yeah, and there's also kind of the issue that it gets, and I made the mistake first too until I knew that if you translate it gets translated as Ashura. So if you're just looking at the Japanese result, you might not even realize that it's Ashla and not Ashura. So, yeah. So that's something to think about.
Something to think about for sure. That's if there's ever an appropriate usage of the plot thickens, I think it would be there. Mm-hmm. Jay, let me ask you before we go. I think we've praised the booking. I think we've all got our eyebrows raised at a few different things. What's the thing you're most looking forward to on Kobe World this year?
Probably get out of the main event, obviously.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, otherwise, I'm most honestly, the opener is something I'm interested in, because I'd be really interested to see one of those three guys get the win. Daiki, Fuda, or Aki. Actually, this is where Mochi not being in the match is actually a bonus, because Paradox, particularly Hulk, Susumu, and Kage, have been on a bit of a losing. They win, but they've been on a bit of a losing streak, losing matches that you wouldn't expect them to lose. Particularly Hulk has been getting pinned in matches where you wouldn't think Hulk would be the one getting the pin. So Fuda, Daiki, or Aki getting a big pinfall win in the opener, I think would be really cool. Yoshioka getting the high fly flow officially, or getting permission to call his frog splash the high fly flow, I think would be good. The Dragongate 3-way is going to be insane, as always. The Twin Gate match is probably going to be more along the lines of, I don't know, what can we compare it to?
It kind of feels like, Jay, that in the past, when we would talk about Kobe World shows, we would always kind of go like, well, the Twin Gate match might be the barometer of this being an all-time show, or this being like a very good one. This is the rare Kobe World where the Twin Gate is not in that position.
This feels more of like a Horiguchi Saito versus Shingo Yamato.
Yeah.
Kobe World, whatever it was, 20, I guess maybe 20, what was that, 2010?
2010 was Holt's hair match. Yeah.
2009 was Real Hazard, Saito and Horiguchi against Yamato and Shingo, I guess is because Minora and Jason are, heel versions of them are pretty similar to like the heel Horiguchi Saito. And then you have the, Yamato and Shingo just freshly back together as partners are pretty analog to Ben-K and Hyo. So, and unfortunately that match sucked. Hopefully it's not like that, but that's kind of where I have the Twin Gate slotted in my head right now. And then the main event. But it's again, like I said, this is with the current landscape of Dragongate, this is the best possible card they could have put together for the major matches.
And you have your big outsider not really in the title situation. Whereas in the past, the outsider might be higher up the card. Right now, that's match 6. So like the go to intermission match, we're coming back from intermission match right now. And I feel like in the past, like especially like when Hiromu came in, that was it feels like the X and the outsider factor is a lot lower on this one. And yeah, I'm saying that about Hiroshi Tanahashi, the biggest star in pro wrestling over the last 18 years in Japan, making an appearance here. But it does really feel like that if you gave someone the Dragon Gate roster and said, you have to build this card based on this roster, I can't think of ways to make this card much better. I think showing the work, like 100%. This is the, and especially for the companies out right now, like this is the biggest card that they can do. And I feel like that this, especially in the with the way that houses and everything kind of have been, and with the schedule changes, that like putting this kind of card here at this time and in what will be your biggest venue that you'll run up until you run this venue again next year, it's I don't know like what else you could do to make this card stronger personally.
Yeah, and I really wish, I was really, and again, this could be something that's being really hoping, and still am probably misguided. This is very misguided, but I'm holding out hope that the spot at the end of the year where Fukuoka used to be is going to be the new Kobe venue. I don't think it is. Again, my hope is probably very, very, very misguided on this. I asked when I was getting my briefing for Korakuen, I was like, "Is there, are there any prize announcements for Kobe?" And they were, the producers told me, "Well, we haven't heard anything." But it was kind of like I don't know if it's they haven't heard anything because there isn't anything, or they haven't heard anything because they legitimately haven't heard anything. So I don't know if I'm being nuanced on that.
No, I gotcha. So I don't think we've talked about this new Kobe venue before. How much? Well, what are we talking about size wise? Like, are we talking about like a second big show in Kobe, or is this going to kind of be added into the rotation the way that like Sambo and Art Center have been in filling that kind of role?
It's a 10,000 seat venue. It's a new state of the art basketball venue, and that's all that's being built right now. Like Yokohama Budokan, state of the art place for basketball. The smaller one the bigger one in Nagoya, like the new giant venue in Nagoya, is state of the art for basketball, and this new one in Kobe is state of the art for basketball. So just have to hope that these state of the art for basketball venues eventually become affordable for pro wrestling companies to run. But yeah, no, it's a brand new state of the art basketball venue. It's 10,000 people, better access than Kobe World Hall. And it's Kobe, so you really want to get there before someone else does.
Yeah, no, and at least for a company that's always been Kobe and Greater Kansai based, having like losing Gate of Destiny or Bodymaker 1 for this time period, and already being able to have another venue there that could be possibly pick up when that's not like the case that's happening really in Nagoya. I'm fascinated by the idea of like having that second Kobe venue. I think that especially for like the end of the year shows, with how they always would finish up in Kobe, at least with like that local fan appreciation show traditionally, the I think that'd be a real positive sign personally if they end up doing that venue.
Yeah, I would. Unfortunately, I don't think, because my instinct is to say, because it's Kobe,
Mm-hmm.
even if you take a bath on it, you want to run it just to be the first wrestling company to run there. But the reality is, this company can't afford to take a bath on anything. This company can't afford to run their wash their hands under the hose on anything, much less
Take a bath.
Take a full on bath. Yeah. So if they could find the sponsors, if they could get all of that to make it happen, I would love to see it, and I would love for that to be the prize on the screen at intermission. Right.
Do you know if, like, because I know, like, one of the situations, at least with the older venues, especially, well, that international fans might not pick up on, is that most of these venues, like, when they say prefectural, that means it's owned by the prefecture. Do we know if these... I know that the Nagoya one does have a little bit of a public... I don't know if it's publicly owned, but, like, at least with the JSA and Sumo being around it, like, there is a level of public, like, interest into it. Do we know if the Kobe one is privately owned or if it's owned by the city?
It's private.
Oh man, because that was always the thing that surprised me when I was looking at like rates, was as soon as it's owned by the prefecture, how much cheaper it is in comparative to private venues.
Yeah, no, it's pretty expensive. When I was last looking at it, again, maybe hometown homie discount, and you can get a sponsor to pitch in for it.
Is the B League really like I've always heard like the soccer league really gaining steam and popularity? Is the B League, is this chasing the fandom or the fan base, or is this actually a thing where the B League is kind of making that position to become like a major sport within the country?
I don't really have the context on it. All I know is that they're building a lot of really nice basketball venues. And again, I don't know if the demand, it's because they're meeting demand, or they're trying to make it a thing. Mm-hmm. But I mean, hey, hopefully they're trying to make it a thing, and then it doesn't become a thing, and then the rent goes down.
Right, yeah, and it just trickle down, and the way that these prefecture gyms, kind of like a lot of them were like places, at least in Osaka and Nagoya, that were sumo venues that kind of trickled down. I mean, that's essentially the case with like Sumo Hall, but having the ability of like, oh, this flash in the pan thing that everyone built these venues for tailed off, and now everyone else can use it. That seems to be like what, at least what kind of I'm hoping for, at least.
Yeah, maybe all the giant server farms that were built for AI get turned into wrestling when that bubble pops. They'll all get turned into wrestling venues.
I mean, that's gonna be a lot of, at least from what buildings that I've seen, like the one that just make like a bunch of dojos, because I feel like that almost like every dojo kind of looks like that.
Yeah, they could. Dragongate could use a new one.
Rebuild the sanctuary.
Yeah, no, not rebuild the sanctuary. Literally, maybe. The dojo was state of the art in 1999.
I mean,
what year?
Weights are weights. Now? Yeah, 26 years.
Weights.
I was saying weights are weights. So I mean, if it was good enough in 1999, one would say.
Yeah. Pick it up, and put it down. Weight doesn't change.
Well, Case, did you have anything else you wanted to ask Jay before we get out of here?
I don't. I'm very excited for World. I try to say this to you every few months, Jay, but I think you've developed into, if not the single best play-by-play guy in all of wrestling, then absolutely one of the best. I know it's something that maybe you don't believe, but I think you and Ho-Ho have just developed into a knockout commentary tag team. I look forward to the English commentary on Kobe World. I look forward to Kobe World, and I don't have anything else. It has finally dawned on me that we are a week out from Kobe World, and as always, I couldn't be more excited.
No, thank you. I appreciate it, even if I don't believe it. That's funny. My 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 team, my immediate team at work, got reorged at the beginning of the year, and it's like me. Our manager is Japanese, but she doesn't have very good English, and we have there's another Japanese guy same age as me who thinks his English is good, but his English is not very good. And this this girl, I think she's Malaysian, who has a lot of charisma, but is also really green. So she can speak, but she can't speak confidently. And then a Brazilian guy who is not comfortable speaking his English. He's fluent in English, but he isn't confident enough with it. So unfortunately, who do you think has become the go-to person when we need to present in front of senior management or present at all hands and present at all of these other things? I can't escape it. I hate it.
No, I think you're excellent. You know, I thought the Yamato versus Mochizuki match, for instance, it's just I feel like every few months I've got a new match where I go, well, that's the best call Jay's ever had. And I think you and Ho-Ho, you know, I think you guys have excellent charisma and chemistry with one another. And I'm very impressed by the entire deal. And like I said, I can't wait for World now.
Okay. I'm training. I'm building an AI, training an AI, and I'm hoping that it can fully replace me on commentary at some point. I'm uploading all of my knowledge to it right now, and then I will train it on my voice, and then I'll beam it. I'll have them beam the signal over to it, and I'll send it to them.
Oh, absolutely not. We need you on the call. I look forward to it.
Yeah,
I have to say, Jay, I would go for it. No more having to worry about making the last train out of Fukuoka. You just comfort of your house.
Yeah, man. This is the last. I think World is the last time I have to travel this year. I don't know if I'm gonna have to go for Gate of Destiny or not. That's still up in the air. I was asking. I was like, am I gonna have to go for that? And they looked at me and made the finger thing means money. And so I hope I don't have to. I hope I don't have to. But the second show is a 3 p.m. show, so it wouldn't be too bad. I'd be able to get home in enough time. But I'm kind of really psyched on the idea of after this weekend, I don't have to think about leaving my neighborhood aside from going to Korakuen Hall until next year, because I am that much of anxiety-ridden shut in at this point. It's going to be amazing. Is
Korakuen going to be the biggest venue for Dragongate after the 13th for the rest of the year?
After Otaku.
After Oda, so like after August, it's Korakuen, and then basically whenever they have Sambo dates for bigger quote unquote venues.
There's no venue over 1,000 people until Fukuoka.
I thought it was going to be that way, but hearing it come out of your mouth, it kind of lets it settle in even more. That's it.
And that's just. It's the unfortunate reality, when we get to the end and I don't want to go on the attendance count rant again, but when we get to the end of the year and everybody is doing their total attendance for promotions for the year, Dragongate's not going to do well this year. They're not doing well this year, and houses have been down. Compared to last year. Korakuen especially is still, pretty difficult and disappointing in a lot of places. When we had, the 2 days and, the first day was all title matches and you kind of see the crowd and you're like, shit, tomorrow with, Desperado's gonna have more people. And you have to kind of take the optimistic view on it of, well, today the title matches, these are all the Dragongate fans, and we're going to get the same people tomorrow, plus the Desperado fans, and that's why tomorrow's going to be the higher attendance.
Sure.
But, and maybe that is the case, maybe not. But yeah, it's gonna be, it is what it is until kind of using the Nagoya and Tsuyohashi idea, there's no big venues that are, there's no over 1,000 seat venues, but there's not a lot of places that you're drawing 1,000 people. So even if you have 1,000 seat venue, if you're only doing 500, 600 in there anyway, then there's still growth. So as long as even in this situation you see growth, and Sambo goes from, I don't know, whatever the current average for Sambo Hall is. I'm just gonna pick a number. If the average for Sambo Hall this year 350, let's build on that 350 until you can afford to run the 10,000 seat new Kobe venue. If Tsuyohashi right now is 320, but there's an entire second floor of seats that you can fill, let's just try and hope that you can start putting people in the second floor of seats until Congress Center is back open, and not care how the total number is at the end compared to other promotions, compared to the Ozawa Shock or Kamitani, or even compared to how Dragongate did a year ago, because the context isn't the same. Fukuoka is not there, and Edion isn't there. I mean, last year, again, attendance numbers and everything, but it was a squeak over 100,000, I think was the total number at the end. And just taking Fukuoka and Edion off that, like, you're taking big numbers off the board. So you have to expect it to be that way, but you have to make the best of it. Just hope you see growth in the places that you're at now.
Yep, and I think when you look at this Kobe World card, the one thing you can't say is that this company is not trying to put its best foot forward. As I said earlier, I don't know how one can make a card for Dragongate using the Dragongate roster that feels as big as this one that we're going to have next weekend.
Can I make a cryptic comment?
Oh, please do.
To close this out, because I have been spoiled on certain things, not everything.
Okay.
But there's something pretty exciting coming. Probably, after Otaku. I don't know exactly when after Otaku, but there's something coming that if it pans out, should at least get you guys talking. It'd be pretty exciting.
Okay.
All right. Well, we'll keep our eyes and ears peeled at least for that. Jay, thank you again for stopping by.
Unfortunately, it's not Shimizu.
Okay.
But anyway, Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Kobe World is on July 13th from Kobe Korakuen Hall. Jay, at least in person, Jay, for now, before JAI is launched, he will have the call along.
Chat DGPT coming.
Thanks again, Jay. We'll get you next time.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, guys. See you guys and see everyone on the network.
My name is Tyler Fornes, and I am one of the co-hosts of the Good, the Bad, and the Hungi AEW podcast here on the Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network. We take a broad scope approach to the world of All Elite Wrestling and the entire universe of Tony Khan. We talk about the big matches, the big stars, the promos, the storylines. And we also look at it from a big picture perspective. How are things going to change over the course of the next 10 years with AEW still in the picture? How are companies like WWE going to adapt and adjust to AEW? Are they going to be a similar way like they did with WCW in the late 1990s? Will there be a counterpunch? We talk about all of that and more on The Good, the Bad, and the Hungi every week on the Voices of Wrestling Network.
Do you like wrestling trivia? Then check out the 5-Star Match Game, the Pro Wrestling Quiz Show. I'm Joe Gagney, and every episode, I grill 3 contestants with 5 rounds of power-packed wrestling trivia. We have over 30 evergreen episodes in the archives covering WWE, AEW, Japan, Mexico, and much, 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 much more. Play along at home and check it out today.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.